The train stopped. The platform was empty. And Clara Whitmore, scarred, broke, and 2,000 miles from home, realized the man who'd promised to marry her had vanished into thin air. What happens when you gamble everything on a stranger's word, and that stranger runs? When the frontier you crossed an ocean of grass to reach offers nothing but wind, dust, and a truth you can't afford to hear? This is Clara's story. A woman marked by fire, a marriage that never was, and a homestead built on lies. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's go back. Back to 1878. Back to the moment everything fell apart. The wheels screamed against iron rails, metal biting metal, and Clara pressed her gloved hand against the window as Nebraska Territory rolled past in shades of brown and gray. Grass. Endless grass. No trees, no hills, just earth and sky pressed together like pages in a book nobody wanted to read. She'd been on this train for 6 days. 6 days of dust in her teeth, strange men staring at the scars on her neck, and the constant rattle of wheels that made sleep impossible. 6 days thinking about the letter folded in her reticule. Dear Miss Whitmore, I am a man of steady character and sound prospects. I own 160 acres under the Homestead Act. If you're willing to work beside a plain man toward an honest future, I believe we could build something worth having. Plain, honest, worth having. 3 things Boston had stopped offering her the day the schoolhouse caught fire. Clara touched the puckered skin below her jawline, the ridges hidden mostly by her high collar, and turned from the window. Across the aisle, a woman in a feathered hat watched her with the kind of pity that felt like a slap. Clara met her eyes until the woman looked away. The conductor's voice boomed through the car. "Calhoun Station! Calhoun!" Her stop. Clara stood, steadying herself against the seat as the train lurched. She had 1 trunk, 1 carpet bag, and 43 cents in her coin purse. Everything she owned, everything she was. The train shuddered to a halt. She stepped onto the platform and the wind hit her like a fist, dry, relentless, carrying grit that stung her eyes. The station was a low wooden building with peeling paint and a roof that sagged in the middle. 3 men stood near the freight office, smoking. A wagon creaked past, the driver hunched against the gusts. No one approached her. Clara scanned the platform. Her letter had been specific. I will meet you at the station on the 14th of September, 4 o'clock arrival. She checked the watch pinned to her bodice. 4:12. Maybe he was late. She waited. The smokers finished their cigarettes and went inside. The wagon disappeared down the rutted road. The wind kept blowing. At 4:30, a man in a clerk's visor emerged from the station office, saw her standing there, and frowned. You waited on someone, miss? Yes. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Mr. Samuel Hale, he owns a homestead north of here. The clerk's frown deepened. Hale? Yes. He scratched his neck. You're the bride, then? Something cold slid down Clara's spine. I am. Ah, hell. He glanced back at the office, then stepped closer, lowering his voice like bad news hurt less when whispered. Miss, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Samuel Hale left town 3 weeks ago. Headed east on the Burlington line. Didn't say where he was going, and he ain't come back. The world tilted. Clara heard the words, but they didn't connect. Left town. 3 weeks. Didn't come back. That's not possible, she said. He sent for me. We had an agreement. The clerk looked miserable. I know, miss. I'm real sorry. His place burned partway down in August. Lightning strike, they think. And after that, he just packed up and went. Sold what he could carry, left the rest. Burned. Gone. Clara's hand found the watch again, gripping it so hard the metal cut into her palm. There must be some mistake, she said, though she knew there wasn't. Men didn't make mistakes like this. They made choices. No mistake, miss. I helped him buy the ticket myself. The clerk hesitated. You got people you can wire? Someone back east who can send you money for passage home? Home. The word was a joke. Her parents were dead. Her brother had made it clear she wasn't welcome after the fire. Too scarred, too shameful, a reminder of disaster at every Sunday dinner. Boston had nothing for her but furnished rooms she couldn't afford, and schools that wouldn't hire a teacher who made children stare. No, Clara said quietly. I don't. The clerk shifted his weight. There's a boarding house in town, Mrs. Garrett's place. She might give you a week on credit if you... I have 43 cents. His face went pale. Jesus. Clara almost laughed. It bubbled up sharp and bitter in her throat, but she swallowed it down because if she started, she might not stop. Is there work in town? She asked. Not for... He trailed off, eyes flicking to her collar, and Clara knew what he wasn't saying. Not for a woman alone. Not for a woman marked. Not for someone with no references, no connections, no man to vouch for her character. I see, she said. The clerk looked like he wanted to help but didn't know how. Men always looked like that. Sorry and useless in equal measure. There's one thing, he said slowly. Samuel had a brother. Twin, actually, though you wouldn't know it to look at them. Nathan Hale. He's been out in the Montana Territory for years, but word is he came back last month. Rode in to see what was left of the homestead after the fire. A brother. Where is he? Clara asked. Got a room above the land office. Keeps to himself mostly. Doesn't talk much. The clerk paused. He's not like Samuel, miss. Samuel was friendly, sociable. Nathan's hard. Spent the war in the cavalry, came back different. Folks say he went west to get away from people, and it suited him. Claire didn't care if he was hard. She didn't care if he was friendly. She cared that he existed, and he was here, and he might be her only chance of not starving to death on the Nebraska plains. Can you tell me where the land office is? The clerk pointed down the street. 3 buildings down, red door. But miss, I don't think... Thank you, Clara said, and lifted her trunk. It was heavier than she remembered. Her arms shook by the time she dragged it off the platform, and the carpet bag kept slipping from her shoulder, but she made it to the street and started walking. The town was barely a town, a general store, a saloon, a church with a steeple that leaned left. Buildings crouched low against the wind like they were trying not to be noticed. Everything looked temporary, as if the whole place might blow away and nobody would bother rebuilding. The land office had a red door, just like the clerk said. Clara set down her trunk, smoothed her skirt, and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder. The door opened. The man standing there was tall, lean, and sundark, with lines around his eyes that made him look older than he probably was. He wore no jacket, just a collarless shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and his forearms were roped with muscle and old scars. His hair was brown, too long, and his eyes were the color of winter sky, pale, cold, unreadable. He looked at her the way you'd look at a stray dog on your porch, wary, annoyed. Help you? His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. Are you Nathan Hale? Depends who's asking. Clara straightened her shoulders. My name is Clara Whitmore. I came from Boston to marry your brother. Something shifted in his expression, not quite surprise, but close. He glanced past her at the trunk, the carpet bag, the empty street behind her. Samuel's gone, he said flatly. I know. The station clerk told me. Then you know there's nothing here for you. He started to close the door. Clara jammed her boot against the frame. Wait. Nathan stopped, eyes narrowing. I have no money, Clara said, the words coming fast now because she could see he was about to shut her out, and if he did, she had nowhere left to go. No family, no way back east. Your brother made me a promise, and he broke it, and I understand that's not your fault, but I am asking you, begging you if I have to, for help, just until I can find work. A few days, a week. There's no work here. Then I'll go somewhere else. But I need time, a place to stay. Please. Nathan studied her face. His gaze lingered on her collar, the edge of scarring just visible above the fabric, and Clara forced herself not to look away. You're a long way from home, he said quietly. I don't have a home. Boston's still east. Boston doesn't want me. He was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped back, pulling the door wider. Come in, he said, but I'm not promising anything. Clara grabbed her trunk and hauled it inside before he could change his mind. The room above the land office was small, plain, and ruthlessly clean. A narrow bed, a table, a chair, a trunk identical to hers shoved against the wall. No curtains, no pictures, nothing that suggested a man actually lived here instead of just sleeping between other places. Nathan gestured to the chair. Sit, Clara sat. He poured water from a pitcher into a tin cup and handed it to her without a word. She drank, realizing only when the water hit her throat how thirsty she was. She'd finished half the cup before she remembered to slow down. Nathan leaned against the table, arms crossed, watching her. "Tell me what happened," he said. So she did. She told him about the letter, the advertisement in the Boston Matrimonial News, the exchange of correspondence that followed. Samuel had been careful, polite, specific. He described his land, his plans, the house he was building. He'd asked about her education, her skills, her willingness to work. He'd been honest about the hardships, early mornings, long winters, the isolation of frontier life, or so she'd thought. He never mentioned the fire? Nathan asked. No, or that he was planning to leave. No. Nathan's jaw tightened. Sounds like him. You don't seem surprised. I'm not. He pushed off the table, moved to the window, stared out at the street below. Samuel always ran when things got hard, even as a kid. Something broke, someone got mad, he'd disappear for a week. Come back when it blew over, act like nothing happened. You didn't get along. We were twins. People expected us to be the same. We weren't. He turned back to her. I joined the army at 18. He stayed, worked the family farm until our folks died, then filed a homestead claim out here. I came back after the war for a month, saw the place, left again. Haven't spoken to him in 4 years. Why did you come back now? Because he wired me after the fire. Said he needed help rebuilding. By the time I got here, he was already gone. Nathan's expression was flat, unreadable. Left me a note saying the land was mine if I wanted it. If not, it'd go back to the government. Clara set down the cup. And do you want it? I don't know yet. Can I see it? He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I came 2,000 miles to live there. I'd like to know what I almost had. Nathan considered this. Then he nodded once, sharp. We'll go tomorrow. It's a 2-hour ride and the light's already going. You can stay here tonight. Where will you sleep? Livery's got a back room. Clara opened her mouth to argue, but he was already reaching for his coat. Door locks from the inside, he said. Don't open it for anyone. There's bread and cheese in the cupboard if you're hungry. I'll be back at first light. He left before she could say thank you. Clara sat alone in the silence, listening to the wind rattle the window, and realized she'd just trusted a complete stranger with her life. She had no idea if that made her brave or stupid. Probably both. Nathan returned at dawn with 2 horses, a week's worth of supplies strapped to the saddle, and a bedroll tied behind the cantle. He didn't ask if she could ride. Just handed her the reins to a stocky mare and said, Her name's Bess. Don't kick her or she'll buck. Clara hadn't been on a horse since she was 12, but she wasn't about to admit that. She mounted awkwardly, skirts bunching around her knees, and tried to look like she knew what she was doing. Nathan swung into his saddle with the ease of a man who'd spent half his life on horseback. He clicked his tongue and his gelding started forward, Bess following without prompting. They rode north out of town. The land opened up around them, flat, wind-scoured, impossibly wide. The sky stretched overhead like a dome, so big it made Clara dizzy. She'd never seen so much space. In Boston, the world had edges, buildings, walls. Here the horizon went on forever, and the grass moved like water, rippling in waves that had no beginning and no end. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. Nathan didn't talk. He rode loose in the saddle, eyes scanning the ground ahead, and Clara got the sense he was always watching, always assessing, checking for something, trouble maybe, or just change. She didn't ask. The silence felt too big to break. After an hour, he pointed to a cluster of dark shapes in the distance. That's it. Clara squinted. As they got closer, the shapes resolved into buildings, or what was left of them. A house, half collapsed, the roof caved in on one side. A barn with charred walls and no doors. A chicken coop lying on its side like a broken toy. Her stomach sank. This was the homestead. This was the future Samuel had promised her. They dismounted near the house. Nathan tied the horses and walked toward the structure without waiting for her. Clara followed, stepping carefully over debris. Burned planks, rusted nails, shattered glass. The front door hung crooked on one hinge. Nathan pushed it open. Inside, the damage was worse. The kitchen was gutted, black streaks climbing the walls where the fire had eaten through. The floor sagged in places, boards cracked and splintered. Furniture lay overturned, a table on its side, chairs with broken legs, a stove that had collapsed in on itself. But the far side of the house, the two back rooms, were mostly intact. Clara walked through slowly, taking it in. The walls were solid. The windows, though cracked, still had glass. The roof over the bedrooms had held. Could it be fixed? She asked. Nathan glanced at her. Maybe, if you had money, time, and a reason to stay. Do you have any of those? He didn't answer, just moved to the window, staring out at the land beyond, acres of prairie grass, a creek cutting through the southern edge, a line of cottonwoods marking the boundary. It's good land, he said quietly. Samuel knew that much. Soil's decent, water's close. If you worked it right, you could make something. But you don't want to. I didn't say that. Clara stepped closer. Then what are you saying? Nathan turned to face her. I'm saying I spent 10 years trying to get away from places like this. Farms, families, expectations. I went west because I wanted to be alone and I was good at it. Coming back here feels like stepping into a grave I already dug. And yet you came. Because he asked. He's not here anymore. I know. Clara studied him, this hard, silent man who'd ridden 1,000 miles for a brother who'd abandoned him, who'd given her shelter without asking for anything in return, who stood in the ruins of a burned house like he was trying to decide whether to rebuild or walk away. What if you didn't have to do it alone, she said. Nathan frowned. What? You said you'd need money, time, and a reason. I can't give you money. But I can work. I can teach, sew, cook, clean. I can learn the rest. And if you stay, I stay. If this place becomes something, I'll be here to help make it that. He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You're suggesting what exactly? Clara took a breath. A partnership. You fix the house. I'll help however I can. We rebuild the homestead together. When it's stable, I'll find a way to pay you back or move on. But until then, we help each other survive. That's not a partnership, Nathan said. That's charity. It's not charity if I work for it. You don't owe me anything. I owe your brother a reckoning, and since he's not here, you're the closest thing I've got. Nathan's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something like it. That's a bad reason to stay. It's the only reason I have. He was quiet for a long moment, eyes searching her face. Then he shook his head, exhaling hard. You're serious? Completely. You understand what you're signing up for? This place is half destroyed. Winter's 2 months out. We'd be working dawn to dusk just to make it livable, and there's no guarantee it'd be enough. You could freeze, starve, break your back for nothing. I could also do all that alone in town with 43 cents and no prospects. Nathan's jaw worked. He looked away, then back, and Clara saw the exact moment he made his decision. All right, he said. We'll try it. 3 months. If it works, we reassess. If it doesn't, I'll get you to the next town with enough money to start over somewhere else. Clara nodded. Deal. They shook hands, his grip calloused, firm, brief. One more thing, Nathan said. What? If we're doing this, we do it legal. People out here talk and a woman staying alone with a man she's not married to? That'll make both our lives harder than they need to be. Clara's heart stuttered. You're saying we should marry on paper. Justice of the peace, no ceremony. Just a document that says you're my wife and I'm your husband. Keeps the gossips quiet and gives you a legal claim to the land if something happens to me. It was practical. Cold. Exactly the kind of arrangement she'd expected from Samuel's letters, and yet it felt heavier somehow, coming from Nathan. You don't have to do that, Clara said. I know, but it makes sense. Doesn't mean anything beyond what we agree it means. Clara looked at him, this stranger offering her a name, a home, a chance, and realized she'd already decided. All right, she said, let's do it. But they rode back to town that afternoon and found the justice of the peace in his office, a narrow man with ink-stained fingers who looked thrilled to have something to do. The ceremony took 4 minutes. Nathan signed the certificate. Clara signed under her new name, Clara Hale, and stared at the letters like they belonged to someone else. The justice handed Nathan a copy. Congratulations, you're legally bound. Nathan folded the paper, tucked it in his coat. Thanks. They walked out into the late afternoon light. Clara waited for something to feel different, but nothing did. She was the same woman she'd been an hour ago. Scarred, broke, standing on the edge of a life she hadn't chosen. Except now she had a name that wasn't hers, and a husband who didn't love her. "We'll head back tomorrow," Nathan said. "Get started on the house." "All right." "You'll need different clothes. Can't work in a dress like that." Clara glanced down at her traveling dress, already dusty from the ride. "I don't have anything else." Nathan considered this, then nodded toward the general store. "Come on." Inside, he bought her 2 work dresses, a pair of men's trousers hemmed short, boots, gloves, and a wide-brimmed hat. Clara tried to protest, but he waved her off. "You can't rebuild a house in petticoats," he said. "Call it an investment." At the counter, the shopkeeper's wife eyed Clara's collar, then the ring on her finger. Nathan's mother's ring, plain silver, too big, but functional. "You're the bride that came for Samuel," the woman said. "I am." "And now you're married to Nathan." "Yes." The woman's smile was thin, knowing. "Well, I hope you know what you're getting into, Mrs. Hale." Clara met her gaze, steady. "I do." She didn't. Not really. But she was learning. They left at first light, supplies loaded, and rode back to the homestead in silence. This time, Clara noticed things she'd missed before. The way the land sloped gently toward the creek, the wildflowers clustered near the tree line, the sheer quiet of the place. No carriages, no crowds, just wind and grass and sky. By the time they arrived, the sun was high and hot. Nathan unloaded the horses, then grabbed a hammer and a box of nails. "We start with the roof. If we don't fix it before the rains come, the back rooms will flood and we'll lose everything." Clara tied back her hair, pulled on the gloves, and followed him up the ladder. The work was brutal. Her hands blistered within the first hour. Her shoulders screamed by noon. Nathan didn't slow down, didn't offer sympathy, just kept moving, pulling up burned boards, measuring new ones, hammering them into place with quick, efficient strikes. Clara held planks steady, hauled nails, fetched tools, and tried not to think about how much her body hurt. By sunset, they'd patched a third of the roof. Nathan climbed down, wiping sweat from his face. "Good start." Clara's arms were shaking. "That's all?" "That's enough for today." He built a fire outside while Clara unpacked the food. Salt pork, beans, hardtack. She'd never cooked over an open flame before, but she watched what he did and tried to copy it. The beans burned. The pork was too salty. Nathan ate without complaint. After dinner, he spread his bedroll near the fire. Clara hesitated, then carried hers to the far side of the house, close enough to feel safe, but far enough to keep the distance they'd agreed on. She lay on her back, staring up at the stars. There were so many. In Boston, the sky had been hazy, orange-lit, small. Here, it was black and infinite, scattered with light so thick it looked like someone had spilled salt across velvet. Clara had never felt so small, or so strangely alive. The days blurred together. Nathan worked like a machine, precise, tireless, focused. Clara learned to keep up. She stopped flinching at splinters, stopped counting blisters, stopped thinking about how far she was from anything familiar. They fixed the roof, cleared the debris, rebuilt the stove, patched the walls. Slowly, impossibly, the house began to look like a house again. They didn't talk much. Nathan wasn't a talker, but they developed a rhythm, wordless, efficient, built on gestures and glances. He'd point, she'd hand him a tool, she'd stumble, he'd steady her without comment. They moved around each other like dancers who'd rehearsed the steps 100 times. At night, Clara read by firelight, books she'd brought from Boston, stories she'd loved as a girl. Nathan listened sometimes, stretched out with his head on his saddle, eyes half closed. One evening, she looked up from a passage and found him watching her. "What?" she asked. "You read well," he said. "I was a teacher." "I know, you mentioned it." "I liked it before." "Before what?" Clara hesitated. She hadn't talked about the fire with anyone except the doctors. But something about the darkness, the distance, the fact that Nathan never looked at her like she was broken, it made the words easier. "There was a fire at the school where I taught," she said quietly. "One of the lamps tipped. The curtains caught. I got the children out, but I went back for my books and the ceiling came down. By the time they pulled me out, half my neck and shoulder were burned. Nathan didn't flinch. That why you left Boston? Partly. The scars made people uncomfortable. Parents didn't want me teaching their children. My family, she trailed off. They tried to be kind, but I could see it in their eyes. I reminded them of something awful. It was easier for everyone if I left. So you answered Samuel's ad. I thought I could start over, be someone new. She closed the book. Stupid, I know. It's not stupid, Nathan said. It's human. Clara looked at him, surprised. He sat up, resting his forearms on his knees. I left because I couldn't stand being the son my father wanted. The soldier people expected. The man who'd settle down and farm and raise kids and die in the same place he was born. I went west because I thought distance would make me different. It didn't. I was still the same person, just lonelier. Do you regret it? No, but I don't recommend it either. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Why did you really come back? Clara asked. Nathan stared into the flames. Because Samuel asked. And because some part of me wondered if I'd been wrong. If maybe I could build something here that wasn't just running away. And? Still figuring that out. Clara smiled, just a little. Me too. But by the end of the first month, the house was livable. Not comfortable, not pretty, but solid. The roof didn't leak. The stove worked. The windows shut. Clara scrubbed the floors, patched the curtains, planted a small garden near the creek. Nathan built a new chicken coop, repaired the barn, started clearing land for spring planting. They fell into a routine. Up at dawn, work until dusk, dinner by the fire, sleep. It was hard, exhausting, relentless. It was also the most purposeful Clara had felt in years. One afternoon, she was hauling water from the creek when she heard hoofbeats. She looked up to see a wagon approaching, a man and a woman, both middle-aged, both watching her with open curiosity. The wagon stopped. The man tipped his hat. Afternoon, ma'am. You Mrs. Hale? Clara set down the bucket. I am. Name's Tom Brennan. This is my wife, Alice. We've got a farm about 3 miles south. Heard Nathan Hale was back and that he'd brought a wife. News travels fast, Tom grinned. Not much else to do out here but talk. Alice climbed down from the wagon, holding a cloth-wrapped bundle. We brought bread and some preserves. Figured you might not have had time to bake yet. Clara took the bundle, surprised. Thank you. That's very kind. It's what neighbors do. Alice glanced past her at the house. Place looks better already. Nathan working hard? We both are. Good. Samuel let it go to seed before the fire. Nice to see someone putting effort in. She paused. You settling in all right? I know it's a rough adjustment coming from back east. It's different, Claire admitted, but I'm managing. Tom nodded approvingly. Well, if you need anything, tools, help, advice, you let us know. We're not fancy, but we look after our own. They stayed for another 10 minutes, chatting about weather and crops and the approaching winter, then climbed back into the wagon and left. When Nathan returned that evening, Clara told him about the visit. Brennans are good people, he said. Tom helped me clear some of the burned timber last week. They seem to think we're settling in. Aren't we? Clara looked at him, startled. It was the first time he'd used "we" like it meant something. I suppose we are, she said. Nathan nodded and went back to his work. But Clara caught the faint edge of a smile, and something warm settled in her chest. The first cold snap hit in late October. Clara woke to frost on the windows and her breath misting in the air. She dressed quickly, layering every piece of clothing she owned, and went outside to find Nathan already up, chopping wood. Winter's coming early, he said. How early? 6 weeks maybe. We need more firewood, a lot more. They spent the next 2 weeks cutting, splitting, and stacking wood until Clara's hands were raw and her back ached so badly she could barely stand. But by the time the first snow fell, they had a pile taller than the house, and the barn was packed with hay for the horses. The snow came soft at first, light flurries that melted by noon, then heavier, then relentless. By mid-November, the world was white. Clara had never seen so much snow. It piled against the house, drifted across the fields, turned the creek into a silent, frozen ribbon. The wind howled at night, shaking the walls, and Clara lay in her room, hers now, the second bedroom with the patched roof and the narrow bed, and listened to the storm rage outside. She wasn't scared. Not anymore. Because across the hall, Nathan was there. Solid. Present. A man who didn't run. One evening, snowed in and restless, Nathan taught her to play cards. They sat at the kitchen table, the fire roaring, a deck of worn cards between them. "Ever play poker?" he asked. "No." "It's easy. I'll teach you." He did. Patiently, clearly, without condescension. Clara picked it up quickly and beat him 3 hands in a row. Nathan stared at his cards. "You're either very lucky or very good at lying." Clara smiled. "Maybe both." He laughed, an actual laugh, low and rough, and Clara realized it was the first time she'd heard him make that sound. It changed his face, made him look younger, less haunted. "Your turn to deal," he said, and pushed the deck toward her. They played until midnight, the world outside silent and white, the house warm and safe. And for the first time since stepping off that train, Clara thought, I could stay here. I could build a life here. Not the life she'd planned, but maybe a better one. Winter deepened. They were snowed in for days at a time, the drifts so high they couldn't open the front door. Nathan dug them out every morning, carving a path to the barn, the woodpile, the creek. Clara cooked, mended, read aloud. Nathan carved, small things, animals mostly, horses and birds and wolves. His hands were surprisingly deft, the knife moving with practiced ease. One night he handed her a small wooden bird. "For you," he said. Clara turned it over in her hands. It was perfect. Delicate wings, tiny talons, a beak sharp enough to be real. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's a sparrow. They're tough. Survive anything." She looked up at him, and their eyes met. Something passed between them. Unspoken, fragile, new. Nathan cleared his throat and stood. "I'll check the fire." He left the room. Clara held the sparrow, her heart beating too fast, and wondered if she was the only one who felt it. The space between them, shrinking. The silence, meaning something. The partnership, becoming something more. In December, the Brennans came by with news. The territorial governor was sending an inspector in the spring to verify homestead claims. Anyone who hadn't met the residency and improvement requirements would lose their land. Nathan swore under his breath. "You've been here long enough, haven't you?" Clara asked. "Barely." "And the improvements?" He gestured at the house. "They'll want to see proof. Receipts, records. Samuel kept none of that." "Then we'll create them." "It's not that simple." "Why not? We've rebuilt the house, cleared the land. We're living here, working it. That's what they want to see, isn't it?" Nathan looked at her, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is." They spent the next week documenting everything. Measurements, repairs, expenses. Clara wrote it all down in neat, careful script, organizing it into a ledger that looked official and thorough. When they were done, Nathan read through it and shook his head, half amazed. "You're better at this than I am." "I was a teacher. I know how to make things look presentable." "Presentable." He huffed a laugh. "This is damn near perfect." Clara felt a flush of pride. They were building something, together, and it was working. Christmas came. Clara baked bread, roasted the last of the salt pork, and tried to make the kitchen feel festive. Nathan carved her another bird. A robin this time, painted red with dye he'd bartered for in town. She gave him a scarf she'd knitted from unraveled yarn, clumsy stitches, but warm. He wore it every day after that. They didn't talk about what they were becoming, but Clara felt it in the way he checked on her when the wind got bad, the way she made sure his coffee was hot in the mornings, the way they moved through the house like two parts of a whole, fitting together without effort. One night, she woke to the sound of Nathan pacing in the other room. She got up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and found him by the window, staring out at the snow. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He glanced back. "Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." She stepped closer. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just thinking." "About what?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "About how strange this is. Being here, with you, building something I didn't plan for. Strange bad or strange good? Nathan turned to face her fully. The moonlight through the window cast half his face in shadow, but his eyes were steady, serious. Strange good, he said. I think. Clara's breath caught. I think so too, she said softly. They stood there, close but not touching, and the silence stretched between them like a thread pulled taut. Nathan's hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed her cheek, gentle, uncertain. Clara. A knock shattered the moment. They both froze. Another knock, hard, insistent. Nathan crossed to the door, hand on the rifle he kept by the frame. Who's there? A voice called back, muffled by wind and wood. Nathan Hale? Open up. We need to talk about this land. Nathan's face went hard. Clara's stomach dropped. Because that voice didn't belong to a neighbor. It belonged to trouble. And it had just found them. Nathan pulled the door open just wide enough to see out, the rifle loose in his other hand, not aimed, but ready. Clara stayed back, heart hammering, watching the shadows shift in the lamplight. The man on the porch was tall, well-dressed in a wool coat that looked too expensive for Nebraska territory, and his boots were clean despite the snow. Behind him stood two others, rougher-looking, hands shoved in their pockets against the cold. Nathan Hale, the man repeated. That's right. My name is Edmund Carver. I'm an attorney representing the estate of your late father, William Hale. Nathan's expression didn't change. My father's been dead 6 years. I'm aware. May I come in? This concerns your brother's homestead claim, and it's rather urgent. Nathan glanced at Clara, then stepped aside. Make it quick. Carver entered, his two companions staying outside. He removed his hat, revealing slicked back hair and a face that belonged in a courtroom, not on a frozen prairie. His eyes swept the room, taking in the patched walls, the simple furniture, Clara standing by the fire in her nightgown and blanket. Mrs. Hale, I presume? Clara pulled the blanket tighter. Yes, a pleasure. He turned back to Nathan. I'll get to the point. Your brother Samuel filed a homestead claim on this land 3 years ago. However, recent evidence has come to light suggesting that claim was fraudulent. Nathan's jaw tightened. What evidence? Carver reached into his coat and produced a folded document. This is a deed of sale dated 1875, signed by your father, transferring ownership of this property to his nephew, your cousin, James Hale, in exchange for care and support during his final illness. The deed was properly recorded in Boston, but never filed with the Territorial Land Office here. We've rectified that oversight. He held out the paper. Nathan didn't take it. That's impossible. My father never owned this land. Samuel claimed it under the Homestead Act after our parents died. Your father acquired the land through a military land grant in 1869, Mr. Hale. As a Union veteran, he was entitled to 160 acres. He selected this parcel but never resided here. When he fell ill, he sold it to James to cover his debts and medical expenses. The sale was legal and binding. Then why didn't James file the claim himself? He was abroad at the time. By the time he returned, Samuel had already filed his homestead claim, presumably in ignorance of the prior sale. James is a generous man. He allowed Samuel to work the land, assuming the matter would be resolved amicably. But when Samuel abandoned the property and you took possession, it became necessary to formalize the situation. Nathan's hand shifted on the rifle. Where's James now? In town. He arrived yesterday. He's prepared to offer you compensation for the improvements you've made, provided you vacate the premises within 30 days. Clara's stomach turned to ice. This is our home, she said, her voice sharper than she intended. We've rebuilt it. We've been living here for months. Carver's smile was thin, patronizing. I understand your distress, Mrs. Hale, but the law is clear. Homestead claims cannot supersede prior ownership. Your husband's brother filed illegally, whether he knew it or not, and you've been residing on property that doesn't belong to you. Bullshit, Nathan said quietly. Carver's eyebrows lifted. I beg your pardon? You heard me. This is a shakedown. My father never owned this land because Samuel filed the claim himself, followed every requirement, and held it legally for 3 years before the fire. If James had a legitimate deed, he'd have filed it years ago. He's filing it now. Convenient timing, right before the spring inspection, when the territory's verifying claims. Nathan stepped closer. How much is James paying you? Carver's expression hardened. I'm a licensed attorney, Mr. Hale, acting on behalf of my client. If you refuse to vacate, he'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. I assure you the courts will not look kindly on squatters." "We're not squatters," Clara said. "We're married. This is our homestead." A marriage of convenience entered into after the fact doesn't change the underlying ownership issue. Carver tucked the document back into his coat. "You have 30 days. After that, James will seek a writ of ejectment, and you'll be removed by force if necessary. I suggest you use the time to make arrangements." He turned toward the door. Nathan moved faster, blocking his path. "You tell James if he wants this land, he can come talk to me himself, not hide behind some Boston lawyer." Carver met his gaze, unflinching. "I'll relay the message. Good evening, Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale." He left, his men falling in behind him. Their horses' hoofbeats faded into the night. Nathan slammed the door, the rifle clattering against the wall as he set it down too hard. "Nathan, don't!" He crossed to the table, gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles went white. "Just don't." Clara gave him space, watching the tension coil through his shoulders, the rapid rise and fall of his breathing. She'd never seen him like this. Angry, yes, but also shaken. Cornered. After a long moment, he spoke. "This is exactly the kind of thing Samuel would do. File a claim without checking if the land was already spoken for. Assume it'd work out. Leave someone else to deal with the consequences." "Do you think the deed is real?" "I don't know. Maybe. My father was sick for a long time before he died. He might have sold something to James or promised him something. But this?" He gestured toward the door. "Showing up now, with a lawyer, demanding we leave. That's not about honoring some old agreement. That's about taking advantage." Clara moved closer, her mind racing. If the deed exists, why wouldn't it be on record here? Why only in Boston? Because James never intended to work the land. He wanted it as an investment, something to sell or lease later. When Samuel filed the homestead claim, it complicated things. If James challenged it then, he'd have to prove ownership and residency. Easier to wait, let Samuel do the work, and swoop in after. But Samuel left, and I came back, which means there's still someone here to fight him for it. Clara pulled out a chair, sitting before her legs gave out. "Can we fight him? Legally, I mean?" Nathan scrubbed a hand over his face. "I don't know. We'd need a lawyer of our own, money for court fees, time. And even if we had all that, there's no guarantee we'd win. If that deed's legitimate and properly recorded, the law's on his side. What if it's not legitimate? Then we need to prove it, which means finding Samuel." The name hung between them like a ghost. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire. "Do you know where he went?" "East. That's all the station clerk said. He could be anywhere between here and the Atlantic. We could ask around, send telegrams. Someone must have seen him." Nathan shook his head. "Even if we find him, what makes you think he'll help? He ran once. He'll run again. Maybe, but he's the only one who knows the truth about that claim. If he filed legally, there'll be records, witnesses, something to prove James is lying." Nathan looked at her, and she saw the calculation in his eyes, weighing odds, assessing risks, deciding whether hope was worth the effort. "It's a long shot," he said. "It's the only shot we have." He nodded slowly. "All right, we start in town. Someone there might know where Samuel went or who he talked to before he left. If we can trace his route, we might get lucky. And if we don't?" Nathan's expression hardened. "Then we make James regret coming here." Clara didn't ask what that meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. They spent the rest of the night planning, writing down names, dates, everything they could remember about Samuel's departure. By the time dawn broke, they had a strategy. It wasn't much, but it was something, and something was better than nothing. Nathan saddled the horses while Clara dressed, pulling on the work clothes he'd bought her months ago. They felt different now, not borrowed, but hers, earned. The ride to town was silent, the snow crunching under hooves, the sky gray and heavy with the promise of more storms. Clara's mind churned with questions she didn't have answers to, fears she couldn't name. What if they lost the land? What if all the work they'd done meant nothing? What if this fragile thing they were building, this partnership, this almost marriage, collapsed under the weight of someone else's greed? She glanced at Nathan, riding beside her, his face set in that familiar mask of calm. But she'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand rested too close to the rifle strapped to his saddle. He was scared too. He just didn't show it. They reached Calhoun Station by mid-morning. The town looked smaller in daylight, meaner. Buildings hunched against the wind, streets churned to frozen mud. Nathan tied the horses outside the land office, and they went inside. The clerk was the same man who'd been there the day Clara arrived, older now in her memory, though only months had passed. "Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale." He nodded to them both. "What can I do for you?" "We need to see the original filing records for Samuel Hale's homestead claim," Nathan said. "Everything. Application, affidavits, proof of residency." The clerk frowned. "That's public record, but it'll take some time to pull. What's this about?" "Someone's contesting the claim, says the land was sold before Samuel filed." The clerk's frown deepened. "Who?" "James Hale, our cousin. Never heard of him." "He's got a lawyer, Edmund Carver. You know him?" The clerk spat into a brass spittoon near his desk. "Carver. Yeah, I know him. Came through here last week, asking questions, poking around the records office. Didn't say what for, but I figured it wasn't good." "What kind of questions?" "About land grants, veteran claims, transfers of ownership. Wanted to see everything filed before 1876. The clerk leaned back in his chair, eyeing Nathan thoughtfully. "You think he's running some kind of con?" "I think he's trying to steal our land." "Well, you're not the first. There's been a string of these cases lately. Lawyers showing up with old deeds, claiming prior ownership, forcing people off homesteads they've worked for years. Most folks can't afford to fight it, so they settle or leave." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "That's not legal." "Legal enough if the paperwork checks out. And even if it doesn't, by the time you prove it in court, you've spent more money than the land's worth." The clerk stood. "Let me pull Samuel's file. Maybe there's something in there that'll help." He disappeared into the back room. Clara and Nathan waited, the silence thick and tense. "If this is happening to other people," Clara said quietly, "there must be a way to stop it. Not if the law's on their side." "Then we change the law." Nathan glanced at her, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. "You really think it's that simple?" "No, but I think doing nothing is worse." The clerk returned with a thick folder, spreading papers across the desk. "Here. Samuel's application, filed August 1875. Affidavit of residency signed by 2 witnesses, Tom Brennan and a man named Henry Moss. Proof of improvements submitted in 76 and 77. Everything looks in order." Nathan scanned the documents. "No mention of prior ownership?" "None. If your father had a land grant for this parcel, it should have been noted here. But there's nothing. Could it have been filed separately?" "Possible, but unlikely. Military grants go through the same office. If your father claimed this land in 69, there'd be a record." Clara leaned forward. "What if the grant never existed? What if James forged the deed?" The clerk scratched his chin. "That'd be fraud. But proving it's another matter. You'd need the original deed, a handwriting expert, witnesses. And even then, Carver's smart. He wouldn't bring a case this far if he didn't think he could win." Nathan's jaw worked. "Can you make copies of these, all of them?" "Sure. Cost you $1. "Fine." While the clerk copied the documents, Nathan stepped outside. Clara followed, finding him leaning against the hitching post, staring at nothing. "We're going to lose, aren't we?" she said. "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You've been thinking it since last night." Nathan exhaled, breath misting in the cold. "Even if we prove the deed's fake, it'll take months. Maybe years. We don't have that kind of time or money. And in the meantime, James can tie everything up in court, freeze the claim, make it impossible for us to sell or improve the land. We'll starve before we win." Clara felt the weight of it settle over her like snow. Heavy, cold, suffocating. "So what do we do?" Nathan looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked lost. "I don't know," he said again. The clerk appeared with the copies, and Nathan paid him, tucking the papers inside his coat. They mounted the horses and started back toward the homestead, but halfway there, Nathan pulled up short. "What is it?" Clara asked. "The Brennans. Tom signed Samuel's affidavit. He might remember something." They turned south, following the creek until the Brennan farm came into view, smaller than theirs, but tidy, with smoke curling from the chimney and chickens pecking in the yard. Tom was chopping wood when they rode up. He set down the axe, wiping his hands on his trousers. Nathan, Clara. Wasn't expecting company. We need to ask you something, Nathan said, dismounting. About Samuel. Tom's expression shifted, cautious now. What about him? You signed his residency affidavit when he filed the homestead claim. Do you remember what he told you about the land, how he got it? Tom frowned, thinking. Not much, just that he'd filed under the act, same as most folks. Said he'd been working it for a year already, building the house, clearing fields. I wrote out once to verify, saw he was doing the work, signed the paper. Why? Someone's saying the land was sold before Samuel claimed it, that he filed illegally. That's horse shit. I knew Samuel. He wasn't a cheat. Lazy, maybe, but not dishonest. Did he ever mention our father or our cousin James? Tom shook his head. Not that I recall. He talked about you sometimes, said you were out west doing your own thing, but no one else. Clara spoke up. When he left, did he say where he was going? Just east. Took the train out of Calhoun, paid cash for a ticket to Omaha. I figured he'd keep going from there, maybe back to wherever you folks came from originally. Ohio, Nathan said. We grew up outside Cleveland. Well, that'd be my guess. Man runs, he usually runs home. Nathan nodded slowly. Thanks, Tom. You two in trouble? Maybe. We're trying to get ahead of it. Tom glanced between them, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen, I don't know what's going on, but if someone's trying to push you off your land, you don't face that alone. There's a reason we look out for each other out here. You need help. You ask. Understood? Nathan's throat worked. Understood. They rode back in silence, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the snow. By the time they reached the homestead, Clara's hands were numb despite her gloves, and her face ached from the cold. Inside, Nathan built up the fire while Clara put on coffee. They sat at the table, the copied document spread between them, and went through everything line by line. There, Clara said, pointing. Samuel's application lists the land as unoccupied and unclaimed prior to his filing. If our father had a grant, that would have been a lie. Unless Samuel didn't know about the grant, then why didn't James challenge the claim when it was filed? Why wait 3 years? Nathan tapped the paper, thinking. Because he needed time to build a case. Or because he didn't know about the claim until recently. Or because the deed's fake and he's counting on us not being able to prove it. They stared at each other across the table. We need Samuel, Nathan said finally. He's the only one who can testify to what he knew when he filed. If he swears under oath that he believed the land was unclaimed, it weakens James's case. And if he won't help, then we find another way. Clara gathered the papers, stacking them neatly. How long would it take to get to Ohio and back? By train? A week, maybe 10 days if the weather holds. Can we afford it? Nathan pulled out the small leather pouch where he kept their money, what little they had. He counted it twice, his expression darkening. Barely. And it'd wipe us out. No money for a lawyer, no cushion if something goes wrong. If we lose the land, we'll have nothing anyway. Nathan rubbed his eyes, exhausted. You're right. I know you're right. He trailed off. What? I hate that it's come to this. Running to Samuel for help, begging him to fix a mess he created. Clara reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. You're not begging, you're fighting. There's a difference. His fingers curled around hers, warm and rough and solid. Come with me, he said. Clara blinked. What? To Ohio. Come with me. I don't want to leave you here alone and... He hesitated. I don't want to do this alone either. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. All right. All right? Yes. We'll go together. Nathan exhaled, relief plain on his face. We leave tomorrow, early, before James or Carver can make another move. They spent the evening packing, clothes, food, the copied documents, enough money for tickets and lodging. Clara wrote a note for the Brennans, asking them to check on the animals while they were gone, and left it weighted under a stone by the front door. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Nathan move around in the other room. She thought about the homestead, the work they'd done, the life they were building, and she thought about losing it. The fear was a living thing, sharp and cold, but underneath it was something else, something fiercer. She wasn't going to let James Hale take this from them. She wasn't going to let anyone take this from them. When dawn came, they were ready. Nathan hitched the horses to the wagon, and they rode to Calhoun Station through a world gone white and silent. The train was already there, steam hissing, passengers boarding. They bought 2 tickets to Omaha, then Cleveland. The conductor eyed them, this rough-dressed couple with dirt under their nails and desperation in their eyes, but took their money without comment. Clara climbed aboard, Nathan right behind her, and they found seats near the back. The train lurched forward, wheels grinding, and the prairie began to slide past the window. Clara watched the homestead disappear into the distance, the house they'd rebuilt, the barn they'd repaired, the land they'd claimed as theirs. "We'll get it back," Nathan said quietly. Clara turned to him. "Promise?" "I don't make promises I can't keep." "Then make this one." He looked at her, really looked, his pale eyes fierce and steady, and nodded once. "We'll get it back," he said, "no matter what it takes." Clara believed him. She had to. The train carried them east, away from the snow and the silence, toward a city neither of them wanted to see and a man neither of them trusted. But they went anyway, because the alternative was losing everything. And Clara Whitmore Hale had already lost too much. She wasn't losing this. Not without a fight. The rhythmic clatter of the rails filled the car as the Nebraska territory faded behind them, replaced by Iowa's rolling hills. Then the muddy sprawl of Omaha. They changed trains there, boarding the eastbound express to Chicago, then Cleveland. 3 days on hard benches, stale bread, and bad coffee. 3 days of Nathan staring out windows, jaw tight, saying nothing. 3 days of Clara running through arguments in her head, trying to find the words that would make Samuel listen. By the time they reached Cleveland, she was exhausted, her whole body aching from the constant motion, her mind numb from the noise and the crowds and the sheer overwhelming density of the East. She'd forgotten how many people could fit into one place, how loud it was, how the air smelled like coal smoke and river mud, and too many bodies pressed too close. Nathan hated it. She could see it in the way he moved through the station, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning for threats, every instinct screaming at him to get out, get away, get back to open space. "Where do we start?" Clara asked. Nathan pulled out a slip of paper with an address scrawled on it. Samuel used to work for a freight company before he went west. Owner's name is Dutch Kaminsky. If Samuel came back, he might have gone there looking for work. They hired a cab, rattling through streets Clara barely recognized. The city had grown since she'd left Boston, sprawling and chaotic, buildings climbing higher, alleys narrowing into shadow. The freight yard was near the docks, a wide, muddy lot filled with wagons, crates, and men shouting orders over the rumble of cargo being loaded and unloaded. The office was a sagging wooden shack with a rusted sign that read Kaminsky and Sons. Inside, a man sat behind a desk piled high with invoices, a cigar clamped between his teeth. He was broad, balding, and looked like he'd spent his whole life lifting things too heavy for one person. "Help you?" he asked, not looking up. "Looking for Dutch Kaminsky," Nathan said. "You found him." "I'm Nathan Hale, Samuel Hale's brother." Dutch's head snapped up. He studied Nathan for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair, cigar smoke curling toward the ceiling. "Sam's brother. Yeah, I see it. You got his eyes. I need to find him. Join the line. Half the debtors in Cleveland are looking for Sam Hale." Clara's stomach sank. "Debts?" Dutch snorted. "Boy showed up here 6 weeks ago, begging for his old job back. I gave it to him, out of pity, paid him in advance for the first week. Next day he's gone, along with $20 from the cash box and a crate of whiskey meant for a client upriver." Nathan's expression went stony. "Where'd he go? If I knew, I'd have sent someone to get my money back. But he vanished. Again. That's what Sam does. Shows up, makes a mess, disappears before anyone can hold him accountable." Dutch jabbed the cigar toward Nathan. "You here to pay his debts?" "No." "Then I can't help you." Clara stepped forward. "Mr. Kaminsky, please. We're not here about money. We're here because someone's trying to steal our land, and Samuel's the only one who can prove it's ours. If you know anything at all, about where he might have gone, we need to know." Dutch chewed his cigar, eyes flicking between them. Finally, he sighed. "There was a girl, Maggie Dunn. She worked at the tavern down on River Street, and Sam was sweet on her before he left for Nebraska. When he came back, he went looking for her. I heard she'd moved, though, north maybe, Sandusky or Toledo." "Do you know which one?" "No, but her brother still works the docks. Patrick Dunn. Ask around, someone will point you to him." Nathan nodded. Thanks. Don't thank me. Just keep Sam Hale away from my yard. They left, the cold November wind cutting through their coats as they made their way toward the docks. The waterfront was a maze of warehouses, piers, and men hauling cargo in the fading light. Clara asked 3 different workers before one pointed them toward a warehouse at the far end. Patrick Dunn's the foreman. Big guy, red hair, can't miss him. They found him shouting at a crew unloading barrels from a barge. He was exactly as described, tall, broad-shouldered, with a shock of red hair, and a voice that carried across the water. Nathan waited until the crew dispersed, then approached. Patrick Dunn? The man turned, frowning. Who's asking? Nathan Hale. I'm looking for information about my brother Samuel. I heard he was asking about your sister. Patrick's expression darkened. Sam Hale. Yeah, I know him. Came sniffing around here a month ago, looking for Maggie. I told him to get lost. Do you know where he went? Don't know, don't care. Maggie's better off without him. Clara spoke up. Mr. Dunn, we're not trying to cause trouble. We just need to talk to Samuel. It's urgent. Patrick crossed his arms, studying her. You his wife? No, I'm Nathan's wife. His eyebrows rose. Huh. Didn't know Sam had a brother. It's complicated, Nathan said. Look, if you know where Maggie is, we need to find her. Samuel might have gone there. Patrick was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, shoulders dropping. Maggie's in Sandusky. Got a job at a boarding house near the train depot. But if Sam's there, you tell him he comes near her again, I'll break his legs. Understood. They bought tickets to Sandusky on the evening train, arriving late in a town that felt smaller, quieter, more like the Nebraska plains than the Cleveland chaos. The boarding house was easy to find, a 3-story building with peeling paint and a sign that read, Rooms by the Week. Inside, a woman sat at the front desk, knitting. She looked up as they entered. Help you? We're looking for Maggie Dunn, Claire said. The woman's needles paused. She expecting you? No, but we need to speak with her. It's about Samuel Hale. The woman's expression soured. That man's brought nothing but trouble. Then you know where he is. She hesitated, then set down her knitting. Wait here. She disappeared upstairs. A few minutes later, a young woman descended, pretty, dark-haired, with tired eyes and a wary expression. I'm Maggie, she said. What do you want? Nathan stepped forward. I'm Samuel's brother. This is my wife, Clara. We need to find him. Maggie's laugh was bitter. Good luck. He left 2 days ago. Clara's heart sank. Where did he go? He didn't say. Just took what little money I'd saved and left while I was at work. She looked away, blinking hard. I should have known better. Everyone told me he was no good, but I thought maybe he'd changed. Did he say anything? Nathan pressed. About where he was going, what he was planning. He talked about heading west again, said there was nothing for him here. Maggie's voice shook. He said a lot of things. Most of it was lies. Nathan pulled out the folded deed copy from his coat. Did he mention this? A land sale? A cousin named James? Maggie took the paper, scanning it. No, he never said anything about family, except that you'd gone west and weren't coming back. Did he mention the homestead, the fire? Only that he'd lost everything and needed a fresh start. She handed back the paper. I'm sorry. I wish I could help more. But Sam Hale's a coward and a liar, and if you're looking for him, you're wasting your time. They thanked her and left, standing in the cold street as snow began to fall again. Now what? Clara asked. Nathan stared at the train depot across the street. We go back. We've lost too much time already. If Samuel's heading west, he won't come near Nebraska. Not with James there. We'll have to fight this without him. Clara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. They'd chased Samuel across 3 states and found nothing but debts and broken promises. They were on their own. They boarded the westbound train at dawn, retracing their route. Cleveland to Chicago, Chicago to Omaha, Omaha to Calhoun Station. 5 more days of rattling wheels and sleepless nights, the money in Nathan's pouch dwindling to almost nothing. When they finally stepped off the train in Calhoun, the platform was empty except for the station clerk, who looked up from his desk and frowned. Mr. Hale! Mrs. Hale! You're back. We are, Nathan said. Anything happen while we were gone? The clerk's face was grim. James Hale filed a petition with the territorial court. Hearing set for 3 weeks from now. And he's had men out at your place. Survey crew, he says, but they've been measuring, taking notes, acting like they own it. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. Thanks for the warning, he said, and walked out. Clara followed him to the wagon. They rode back in silence, the homestead coming into view just as the sun broke through the clouds. It looked the same. The patched roof, the rebuilt barn, the garden plot waiting for spring. But now it felt fragile, temporary, like something that could be taken away. They unhitched the horses, checked the animals, and went inside. The house was cold, the fire long dead, but otherwise untouched. Nathan stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at nothing. We're going to lose, he said quietly. Clara set down her bag. No. Clara, no, she said again, firmer this time. We didn't come this far to lose. We didn't rebuild this place, survive the winter, make it work, just to hand it over to some con artist from Boston. It's not about what's fair, it's about what's legal. Then we make it legal. We find a way. Nathan looked at her, something like hope flickering in his eyes. How? Clara thought about the documents, the affidavits, the gaps in James's story. And then she thought about Tom Brennan's words. If someone's trying to push you off your land, you don't face that alone. We asked for help, she said, from the neighbors, from everyone who knows Samuel filed that claim honestly. We get them to testify. We bury James in witnesses. Nathan shook his head. That won't be enough. Not against a deed. Then we prove the deed's fake. We can't afford an expert. Maybe we don't need one. Clara pulled out the copied documents, spreading them on the table. Look, the deed says it was recorded in Boston in 1875, but Samuel filed his claim here the same year. If our father sold the land, why didn't he inform the territorial office? Why let Samuel file at all? Because he was dying. He probably didn't know. Or because the sale never happened. Because James forged the deed after the fact. Nathan stared at the papers, then at her. It's a theory, he said slowly. But proving it, we go to Boston. We check the records ourselves. If the deed's fake, there'll be inconsistencies, dates that don't match, signatures that don't look right. We don't have the money. Then we borrow it from Tom, from the bank. I don't care, but we're not giving up. Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out, pulling her into his arms, sudden, fierce, desperate. Clara froze, then wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. I don't know if this'll work, he said against her hair. I don't either, but we have to try. He nodded, and they stood there in the cold kitchen, holding each other like the world was trying to tear them apart, and they were the only thing keeping it together. And maybe they were. When Nathan finally pulled back, his hands lingered on Clara's shoulders, eyes searching her face like he was trying to memorize it. Boston's 2 weeks away by train, he said. Round trip. That puts us a week past the hearing. Then we ask for a continuance. On what grounds? New evidence. We're investigating the deed's authenticity. The court has to give us time. Nathan's mouth twisted. You're assuming the court wants to be fair. I'm assuming the court doesn't want to look like it's helping a fraud. Clara stepped back, already moving toward the door. We need to talk to Tom. Now. They found Tom Brennan in his barn, repairing a broken wheel. He looked up as they entered, setting down his tools. Back already? Thought you'd be gone longer. We need your help, Nathan said, and laid out everything. James, the deed, the hearing, the trip to Boston they couldn't afford. Tom listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When Nathan finished, Tom spat into the straw. Son of a bitch. Pardon my language, Clara. I've heard worse, she said. How much do you need? Nathan hesitated. $100, maybe more. I can't promise when we'd pay it back. Don't care about that. You're my neighbors, and you've worked that land honest. That counts for something. Tom crossed to a workbench, pulling out a metal box from underneath. He counted out bills, then handed them to Nathan. 120. Take it. And when you get back, you bring proof that bastard's lying, and we'll make sure everyone knows it. Nathan stared at the money like it might disappear. Tom, don't. You do the same for me. Tom clapped him on the shoulder. Now get out of here before Alice finds out and tries to pack you food for the whole trip. They left before she could, riding hard back to Calhoun Station. The eastbound train wasn't due until morning, so they spent the night in the same room above the land office where Clara had first stayed. It felt different now, smaller, temporary, like they'd outgrown it. Clara lay on the narrow bed while Nathan sat by the window, cleaning his rifle in the lamplight. The repetitive scrape of metal on cloth was oddly soothing. "Do you think we'll find anything?" she asked. "I don't know, but we're out of options. What if the deed's real?" Nathan's hands stilled. "Then we fight anyway. Find some other angle. James might have the law on his side, but that doesn't mean he gets to win." Clara rolled onto her side, watching him. "You've changed." "How? When I met you, you would have walked away from this, gone back west, left the whole mess behind." Nathan set down the rifle, turning to face her. "When you met me, I didn't have anything worth staying for." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara's breath caught. "Nathan, we should sleep," he said abruptly, standing. "Train leaves early." He grabbed his bedroll and headed for the door, leaving her alone in the lamplight. Clara stared at the ceiling, heart racing, and wondered when exactly this arrangement had stopped being practical and started being something else. The train east was more crowded this time. Families heading to relatives for the holidays, salesmen with sample cases, a group of nuns in black habits who prayed in Latin between stations. Clara and Nathan found seats near the back, wedged between a woman with 3 small children and a man who snored loud enough to rattle the windows. They didn't talk much. Nathan stared out at the passing landscape, jaw tight, and Clara read the same page of her book 5 times without retaining a word. By the time they reached Boston, she was exhausted and jittery, her nerves stretched thin. The city hit her like a slap. Noise, crowds, buildings stacked so close the sky disappeared. She'd grown up here, knew these streets, but after months on the prairie, it felt alien, suffocating. Nathan looked worse, his shoulders hunched, his hand drifting toward the knife at his belt every time someone brushed past. "Where's the records office?" he asked, voice tight. Clara oriented herself, recognizing the corner where her old school had stood before the fire. "City Hall, this way." They navigated through the press of bodies, women in fur-trimmed coats, men in top hats, street vendors shouting, horses clattering over cobblestones. The smell of coal smoke and rotting garbage mixed with expensive perfume and fresh bread from a nearby bakery. City Hall was a massive stone building with columns and arches that made Clara feel small. Inside, the ceiling soared, footsteps echoing on marble floors. A clerk directed them to the Registry of Deeds, a stuffy office on the 3rd floor where a bored-looking man sat behind a desk eating an apple. "Help you?" he mumbled around a mouthful. "We need to see a deed record," Nathan said. "Filed in 1875. Property transfer in Nebraska Territory." The clerk swallowed. "Name?" "William Hale. Transferring to James Hale." The clerk sighed, setting down his apple. "Going to need more than that. You know how many deeds we process?" Nathan pulled out this copy Carver had shown them. "Here. This says it was recorded here. I want to see the original." The clerk squinted at the document. "Wait here." He disappeared into a back room, lined floor to ceiling with ledgers and file boxes. Clara and Nathan stood in tense silence, listening to the muffled sounds of the city outside. Carriage wheels, distant shouts, a church bell tolling the hour. 20 minutes later, the clerk returned carrying a thick ledger bound in cracked leather. "Found it, November 1875. He opened the ledger, flipping pages until he found the entry, then turned it around so they could see. There it was. A deed of sale, William Hale to James Hale, 160 acres in Nebraska Territory, dated November 12, 1875. Witnessed by 2 men whose names Clara didn't recognize. Recorded November 20th, 1875. Her heart sank. It was real. Nathan leaned closer, studying the page. "Can I see the original document, not just the ledger entry?" The clerk frowned. "That'll cost extra. Filing fee." "How much?" $2. Nathan paid. The clerk disappeared again, returning with a thin file. Inside was the deed itself. Yellowed paper, faded ink, 2 signatures at the bottom. Nathan spread it on the desk, examining every inch. Clara watched his face, trying to read his thoughts. "What are you looking for?" "Anything that doesn't fit." He He pointed to the date. November 12th, 1875. Samuel filed his homestead claim in August 1875, 3 months earlier. Maybe your father didn't know Samuel had filed. Maybe. Nathan turned to the clerk. Is there any way to verify when this was actually brought in for recording? The clerk shrugged. The ledger entry shows November 20th. That's when it was officially filed. But the deed itself could have been created any time before that? I suppose. People sometimes backdate documents if there's a delay in filing. How common is that? Common enough, especially for property out west where things move slow. Nathan's jaw tightened. He turned to the witnesses listed on the deed. Do you keep records of who these witnesses were? Addresses, occupations? Not usually, just names. Can you check anyway? The clerk sighed but flipped through another ledger, scanning entries. After a few minutes, he shook his head. Nothing. Just the names here. Robert Finch and Thomas Grayson. Could be anybody. Clara wrote down the names. Is there a directory of Boston residents from 1875? Public library might have old city directories. They left City Hall and walked 6 blocks to the library, a grand building with arched windows and reading rooms that smelled like dust and old paper. A librarian directed them to the archives where volumes of city directories lined the shelves, organized by year. Clara pulled the 1875 edition, thick and heavy, and started searching. Robert Finch. 3 listings. A grocer, a dock worker, a clerk. Thomas Grayson. 2 listings, a lawyer and a bookkeeper. She showed Nathan. Any of these names familiar? No. But if James forged this, he'd use real names, people who existed but wouldn't be easy to track down later. Or people who are dead. Nathan's eyes sharpened. Can we check death records? They asked the librarian, who directed them to the Office of Vital Records, another 3-block walk through streets that were growing dark and crowded with evening traffic. The clerk there was less helpful, a thin woman with spectacles who looked annoyed at their request. Death records for specific individuals require proof of relation or legal justification. We're investigating a fraud, Clara said. Then you need to file a police report and have them request the records. We don't have time for that. We're from Nebraska territory. We need this information now. The woman's expression didn't change. I can't help you without proper authorization. Nathan leaned on the counter, voice dropping low. Ma'am, someone's trying to steal our land using a forged deed. We came 2,000 miles to prove it. All we need is to verify whether 2 men were alive in 1875 to witness a document. That's it. 5 minutes of your time. The woman studied him, eyes narrowing. Then she sighed. Names? Robert Finch and Thomas Grayson. She disappeared into the back. Clara and Nathan waited, the office growing dimmer as gas lamps were lit outside. When the clerk returned, she held 2 file cards. Robert Finch, grocer. Died March 1874. Thomas Grayson, lawyer. Died January 1875. Clara's breath left her in a rush. Nathan's eyes went cold and hard. They were both dead when the deed was supposedly signed. The clerk handed him the cards. You'll need official copies if you want to use these in court. That's $5 each. Nathan paid without hesitation. They walked out into the cold Boston night, proof clutched in Nathan's hand. We've got him, Clara said, voice shaking. We've got proof the deed's fake. We've got proof the witnesses were dead. That's not the same as proving James forged it. He'll say it was an honest mistake, that his lawyer used the wrong names, that the deed itself is still valid. But it's enough to raise doubt, enough to get the court to look closer. Nathan nodded slowly. Yeah, it's enough. They found a cheap boarding house near the train station and paid for 1 room, too tired and too broke to care about propriety. The room was small, cold, with a single bed and a washstand. Clara sat on the bed while Nathan stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. We should leave first thing, he said. Get back before the hearing. We will. He turned to face her. Clara, if this doesn't work, it will. But if it doesn't, then we'll figure something else out. We always do. Nathan crossed to the bed, sitting beside her. The mattress dipped under his weight, bringing them closer together. I don't know what I would have done without you, he said quietly. If you hadn't been there that day, if you'd given up and left, I think I would have walked away from all of it. The land, the fight, everything. Clara looked at him, seeing the truth in his face. Why didn't you? Because you made me want to stay. Made me want to build something that mattered. His hand found hers, fingers threading through hers. You make me want to be someone worth staying for. Her throat tightened. Nathan, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative, it was desperate, fierce, months of tension and fear and wanting breaking through the careful walls they'd built between them. Clara kissed him back, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. His mouth on hers, his hands in her hair, the solid warmth of him against her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have. Don't, Clara said. Don't apologize. But we said, I know what we said, and I don't care anymore. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I don't want a marriage on paper, Nathan. I want a real one. With you. His breath caught. You mean that? Yes. He kissed her again, slower this time, and Clara felt something settle deep in her chest, something that felt like home, like safety, like finally finding the place she was meant to be. They didn't sleep much that night. When they did, it was tangled together in the narrow bed, Nathan's arm around her waist, Clara's head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. In the morning, they caught the westbound train, the death certificates tucked safely in Nathan's coat. The journey back felt different, faster, more urgent. They had proof now, ammunition, but the hearing was only days away. They barely spoke, both lost in their own thoughts, watching the landscape roll past, cities giving way to farmland, farmland to prairie, civilization thinning until it was just grass and sky again. When they finally stepped off the train in Calhoun Station, the clerk was waiting. Mr. Hale? Mrs. Hale, you're cutting it close. Hearings tomorrow morning. Nathan's face went pale. Tomorrow? It was supposed to be next week. Judge moved it up. Some legal maneuvering by Carver. Said there was no reason to delay since all parties were available. We weren't available. We were in Boston. Well, you're here now. The clerk handed Nathan a notice. 9 o'clock, courthouse. Don't be late. They rode back to the homestead in silence, the weight of tomorrow pressing down like a physical thing. At the house, Nathan built a fire while Clara laid out the documents. Samuel's original filing, the death certificates, the copy of the forged deed. She organized them by date, by relevance, trying to build a narrative that would make sense to a judge who didn't know them and probably didn't care. We need a lawyer, she said. We can't afford one. Then we represent ourselves. Nathan looked skeptical. You ever been in a courtroom? No, have you? Once. Court-martial hearing during the war. Didn't go well. What happened? A friend of mine shot an officer who was sending men into a slaughter. I testified on his behalf. They hanged him anyway. Clara's stomach turned. That's not going to happen here. Isn't it? James has money, connections, a slick lawyer who knows every trick. We've got death certificates and hope. You really think that's enough? It has to be. Nathan rubbed his face, exhausted. I don't know how to do this, Clara. I can build a house, break a horse, survive a winter. But standing in front of a judge, arguing law, that's not me. Then I'll do it. He looked at her, startled. What? I'll argue our case. I was a teacher. I know how to talk to people, how to make them listen. You know the facts, the timeline, what happened. I'll present it. Clara, this isn't a classroom. I know, but it's our only shot. She crossed to him, taking his hands. Trust me. Nathan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. What do you need me to do? Tell me everything. Every detail about Samuel's claim, your father, the land. I need to know it all by morning. They stayed up all night, Nathan talking, Clara writing, building the case piece by piece. By dawn, her hand ached from holding the pen, and her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But she had it, a clear, coherent argument that proved the deed was fraudulent. She just hoped it would be enough. The courthouse was a 2-story brick building in the center of Calhoun, imposing and official in a town where most structures looked like they might blow away in a strong wind. Clara and Nathan arrived early, but James and Carver were already there, standing on the steps. James Hale looked exactly like what he was, a wealthy Easterner slumming in the frontier, expensive suit, polished shoes, a walking stick he didn't need. He was younger than Nathan, maybe 30, with soft hands and a smug expression that made Clara want to slap him. Carver stood beside him, impeccable as always, briefcase in hand. James's eyes landed on Nathan, and he smiled. "Cousin, it's been a long time." "Not long enough," Nathan said. "I'm sorry it's come to this, truly. But business is business, and the law is clear. The law doesn't protect fraud." James's smile thinned. "Careful, cousin. Accusations like that could be considered slander." "Not if they're true." Carver stepped forward. "Gentlemen, let's save the arguments for inside, shall we?" They filed into the courtroom, a sparse room with wooden benches and a judge's bench at the front. A clerk sat at a side table, shuffling papers. A handful of locals had come to watch: Tom Brennan and his wife, the station clerk. A few others Clara recognized from town. The judge entered, an older man with gray hair and a face that looked like it had seen everything and been disappointed by most of it. Everyone stood until he sat. "Be seated. We're here regarding the petition of James Hale to establish ownership of property currently occupied by Nathan Hale. Mr. Carver, you may present your case." Carver stood, smooth and confident. "Thank you, Your Honor. This is a simple matter of property law. In 1875, William Hale, father of both Nathan and Samuel Hale, sold 160 acres in Nebraska Territory to his nephew, James Hale, for the sum of $500. The deed was properly executed, witnessed, and recorded in Boston. Subsequently, Samuel Hale filed a homestead claim on the same property, either in ignorance of the prior sale or with deliberate intent to defraud. My client has attempted to resolve this matter amicably, but Mr. Nathan Hale has refused to vacate. We ask the court to recognize my client's rightful ownership and issue an order of ejectment. He sat down. The judge looked at Nathan. "Mr. Hale, do you have representation?" Nathan stood. "My wife will be speaking on our behalf, Your Honor." The judge's eyebrows rose. "Your wife?" Clara stood, smoothing her skirt, willing her voice to stay steady. "Yes, Your Honor, Clara Hale." "Mrs. Hale, are you a licensed attorney?" "No, Your Honor." "Then you understand you're arguing at a disadvantage." "I understand we can't afford a lawyer, Your Honor, but we have evidence that Mr. Carver's case is based on a fraudulent document, and I believe the court deserves to hear it." The judge leaned back, studying her. "All right, Mrs. Hale, present your evidence." Clara picked up the first document, her hands shaking slightly. "Your Honor, the deed Mr. Carver presented lists two witnesses, Robert Finch and Thomas Grayson. We traveled to Boston to verify their identities." She handed the death certificates to the clerk, who passed them to the judge. Both men were dead before the deed was allegedly signed. Robert Finch died in March 1874. Thomas Grayson died in January 1875. The deed is dated November 1875. Dead men can't witness documents. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge examined the certificates, frowning. "Mr. Carver?" Carver stood, unruffled. "Your Honor, this is clearly a clerical error. It's not uncommon for names to be misspelled or for the wrong individuals to be listed on historical documents. The deed itself remains valid." "A clerical error?" Clara's voice sharpened. "Two witnesses, both dead, both listed by name and occupation? That's not an error, that's deliberate fraud." "Mrs. Hale," the judge said, voice warning, "mind your tone." "I apologize, Your Honor, but the evidence speaks for itself. This deed was forged, and Mr. James Hale is attempting to steal property that was legally claimed by Samuel Hale under the Homestead Act." James shot to his feet. "That's a lie!" The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Hale, sit down." James sat, face flushed. Carver remained standing. "Your Honor, even if there were irregularities with the witnesses, which we dispute, the underlying transaction remains valid. William Hale had the authority to sell the property. My client paid for it in good faith. The fact that Samuel Hale subsequently filed a homestead claim doesn't negate the prior sale." "It does if the sale never happened," Clara said. "Your Honor, we also have proof that Samuel Hale filed his claim in August 1875. 3 months before this deed was supposedly executed. At the time of his filing, he submitted an affidavit stating the land was unoccupied and unclaimed. If William Hale had already sold it, that affidavit would be perjury. But Samuel had no reason to lie because the sale hadn't happened yet. The deed was backdated and forged after the fact to create a false claim of prior ownership. Yes. The judge looked at Carver. Do you have any evidence that the sale occurred before August 1875? The deed itself is dated November, Your Honor. That's not what I asked. Carver hesitated. We have the deed and the ledger entry showing it was recorded in Boston. That's sufficient under the law. Not if the deed is fraudulent. The judge turned to Clara. Mrs. Hale, do you have any further evidence? Clara pulled out Samuel's original filing documents. This is Samuel Hale's homestead application, submitted August 15, 1875. Signed, witnessed, and approved by the Territorial Land Office. He met all requirements: residency, improvements, good faith. The land was his legally. Mr. James Hale's attempt to claim it now, 3 years later, using a forged deed, is nothing more than theft dressed up in legal language. The judge was silent for a long moment, studying the documents in front of him. Finally, he spoke. Mr. Carver, the death certificates are compelling evidence of fraud. Unless you can produce the original witnesses or provide an explanation for why dead men's names appear on this deed, I'm inclined to rule in favor of the defendants. James stood again, voice rising. Your Honor, this is outrageous. That land belongs to me. My uncle sold it to me, fair and square. Then you should have filed your claim when he sold it to you, not waited 3 years for someone else to do the work. The judge banged his gavel. I'm ruling that the deed presented by Mr. James Hale is fraudulent and therefore invalid. The homestead claim filed by Samuel Hale stands, and ownership transfers to Nathan Hale as Samuel's legal heir. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Tom Brennan let out a whoop. Alice clapped her hands. The station clerk grinned. James turned on Carver, face purple. You said this was airtight. It should have been, you're fired. He stormed out, Carver following, still trying to explain. Clara stood frozen, barely believing what had just happened. They'd won. Nathan's hand found hers, squeezing tight. You did it. We did it. The judge motioned them forward. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, I'm ordering a new deed to be issued in Nathan Hale's name, confirming ownership of the homestead. The clerk will file the paperwork. Congratulations. Thank you, Your Honor, Clara managed. They left the courtroom in a daze, stepping out into the bright morning sun. Tom and Alice were waiting, along with a crowd of neighbors who'd come to watch. That was something, Tom said, grinning. You tore that lawyer apart. She did, Nathan said, looking at Clara with something like awe. Alice hugged Clara tight. I'm so glad you're staying. We need good people out here. We're not going anywhere, Clara said, and for the first time, she believed it completely. They rode back to the homestead, the sun warm on their faces, the land stretching out around them in all directions. Home. Theirs. No one could take it away now. That night, they sat on the porch Nathan had built, watching the stars come out. The air smelled like grass and earth and the promise of spring. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. What do you think Samuel would say if he knew? Clara asked. Probably that we were idiots for fighting so hard for something he threw away. Do you wish he were here? Nathan thought about it. No, he made his choices, we made ours. Clara leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders. What happens now? We plant in the spring, build up the herd, maybe add a room to the house if we can afford the lumber. Sounds like a plan. And we stop pretending, Nathan said quietly. Clara looked up at him. Pretending what? That this is just an arrangement, that we're not... He trailed off, struggling for words. That we're not married, Clara finished. Yeah, she smiled. I think we stopped pretending a while ago. When? Boston, maybe before. I'm not sure exactly, but somewhere along the way you became my husband, and I became your wife, for real. Nathan kissed her forehead, soft and lingering. Good, because I'm not letting you go. I'm not going anywhere. They sat in the darkness, the homestead solid behind them, the future stretching out ahead like the prairie, wide open, uncertain, full of possibility. They'd fought for this. bled for it, nearly lost it, and now it was theirs. Not because someone promised it to them, but because they'd chosen it, chosen each other. And that made all the difference. The morning after the ruling, Clara woke to find Nathan's side of the bed already cold. She dressed quickly, stepping outside into air so crisp it hurt to breathe. The sky was pale blue, cloudless, and the prairie grass rippled silver in the early light. Nathan was by the barn, loading tools into the wagon. He looked up when she approached, and the smile that crossed his face was something she was still getting used to, open, unguarded, real. "Thought you'd sleep longer," he said. "Too much to do." Clara reached for a coil of rope, helping him tie down the supplies. "Where are we going?" "Town. Need to file the new deed with the land office, make it official. Then I figured we'd stop by the Brennans, return the money Tom loaned us." "We can't pay him back yet. Not until we sell something." "I know, but I want him to know we're good for it." Nathan secured the last knot, testing its hold. "After that, we've got a homestead to run. Spring planting 6 weeks out. The barn needs proper doors. That fence line by the creek's sagging, and the chicken coop's about to fall over if we get another windstorm." Clara looked at the list of work stretching ahead of them and felt something settle in her chest. Not dread, but purpose. This was theirs now. Not borrowed, not contested. Theirs to build or ruin as they saw fit. "We should hire help," she said, "for the heavy work. We can't do it all ourselves." "Can't afford help?" "Then we trade for it. Tom's got sons. Other neighbors need things we can provide. I can teach their children. You can help with repairs, livestock." Nathan considered this. "You really were a teacher." "I told you that the day we met." "I know, but I'm just now seeing what that means." He climbed onto the wagon seat, offering her his hand. "Come on, let's make this official." The ride to town was quiet, comfortable. Clara watched the land roll past, noticing things she'd missed before. Wildflowers starting to push through the thawing ground. A hawk circling overhead. The way the light changed the color of the grass from brown to gold depending on the angle. She'd been here less than half a year, but already the prairie felt familiar. Less overwhelming, more like something she could read, understand, maybe even love. At the land office, the clerk greeted them with genuine warmth. "Heard about yesterday. Whole town's talking about how you took down that Boston lawyer. Well done, Mrs. Hale." Clara felt her face heat. "I just told the truth. That's more than most people manage in court." He pulled out the new deed, already prepared. "Judge sent this over first thing. Just need your signature, Mr. Hale, and it's done." Nathan signed his name in careful, precise letters. The clerk blotted it, pressed the official seal, and handed him a copy. "Congratulations. You're now the legal owner of 160 acres of prime Nebraska land. Try not to lose it this time." "Don't plan to," Nathan said. Outside, they stood on the street, the deed in Nathan's hand. He stared at it like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "What are you thinking?" Clara asked. "That I spent 10 years running from responsibility, from putting down roots, and now I'm standing here with a legal document that says I own land, and I'm not scared. I'm relieved." He folded the deed carefully, tucking it inside his coat. "That's your fault, you know." "How is it my fault?" "Because you made me want something more than freedom. You made me want a home." Clara's throat tightened. "Nathan, I love you," he said, the words simple and direct. "I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Clara, not because you helped save the land or because you're my wife on paper. I love you because you're stubborn and smart and you don't give up, and you make me want to be better than I am." Clara blinked against the sudden sting in her eyes. "I love you too. I think I have for a while now. I just didn't know if I was allowed to." "Allowed to?" "We started this as a transaction, an arrangement. It felt wrong to want more." Nathan pulled her close, right there on the street, and kissed her like they weren't standing in front of half the town. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "No more arrangements," he said. "No more pretending. We're married, Clara. For real. For as long as we both want this." "I want this," she said. "I want you. I want the homestead and the work and the life we're building. All of it. Then let's go build it." They stopped at the Brennan's farm on the way back. Tom was in the field, plowing early ground, and he waved when he saw them approach. "Didn't expect to see you two so soon," he called, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Thought you'd be celebrating." Nathan climbed down from the wagon. "Wanted to thank you properly for the loan, for testifying if it had come to that, for believing us. Tom waved him off. Any decent person would have done the same. Most people aren't decent, not when money's involved. Well, I'm not most people. Tom glanced at Clara. How are you holding up? That was quite a show you put on in court. I'm still shaking, Clara admitted. I've never been so scared in my life. Could have fooled me. You looked calm as Sunday morning. Years of practice hiding fear in front of students. Alice appeared from the house, carrying a basket covered with cloth. I saw you coming up the road. Brought you something. She handed the basket to Clara. Bread, preserves, and a pie. You've been traveling too much to bake properly. Clara lifted the cloth, breathing in the smell of fresh bread. Alice, you didn't have to. Of course I did. That's what neighbors do. Alice smiled. Besides, I'm hoping you'll teach my daughter to read. She's 8, bright as anything, but there's no school out here, and I'm not much for letters myself. I'd be happy to, Clara said. Bring her by whenever you'd like. What about the other children? Tom asked. Henry Moss has got 3. The Carlsons have 2. If you're teaching anyway, might as well teach them all. Nathan looked at Clara. You up for running a school? Clara thought about it, the work it would take, the time, the energy. Then she thought about the children growing up out here with no education, no books, no chance to learn beyond what their parents could teach them. Yes, she said. I'm up for it. Tom grinned. I'll spread the word. We'll figure out a space, maybe use the church on weekdays, and we'll pay you what we can. Won't be much, but it's something. It's more than enough, Clara said. They talked for another hour, making plans, trading ideas. By the time they left, Clara's head was spinning with possibilities. A school, a community, a life that felt full and purposeful in ways Boston never had. The weeks that followed were a blur of work. Nathan repaired the barn doors, reinforced the fence, started clearing land for spring planting. Clara cleaned the house from top to bottom, planted a proper garden, and began preparing lessons for the children who would start coming in April. The neighbors helped. Tom and his sons brought lumber and helped rebuild the chicken coop. Henry Moss traded a plow for Nathan's help fixing his wagon. The Carlsons brought seeds in exchange for Clara teaching their daughters to write. Slowly, the homestead transformed. The burn scars faded under fresh paint and new wood. The fields that had lain fallow began to show signs of life. The house stopped feeling like a project and started feeling like a home. One evening in late March, Clara stood in what would become the schoolroom, the small room off the kitchen that Nathan had cleared and fitted with a table and benches borrowed from the church. She arranged slates and chalk, set out primers she'd ordered from Omaha, and tried to imagine children filling the space. Nathan appeared in the doorway. Looks good. It looks empty. Give it time. Once word gets out, you'll have more students than you can handle. I hope so. Clara ran her hand over the table. I missed this. Teaching. Having a purpose beyond just surviving. You've always had purpose. Not like this. When I left Boston, I thought I was running away. Turns out I was running toward something. I just didn't know it yet. Nathan crossed the room, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I'm glad you ran this direction. Clara leaned back against him. Me too. They stood like that for a while, the house quiet around them, the prairie wind soft against the windows. I've been thinking, Nathan said, about expanding, adding another room, maybe 2. If the harvest is good, we could afford it. What kind of rooms? One for us, a proper bedroom, bigger than what we've got. And one for... He trailed off. Clara turned to face him. For what? Nathan looked uncomfortable. For children, if we have them. I know we haven't talked about it, but I figure if we're doing this, being married for real, it might come up eventually. Clara's heart kicked. Do you want children? I don't know, maybe. Do you? I never thought I'd have the chance. After the fire, after everything, I assumed I'd spend my life alone. She touched his face. But with you, yes, I think I'd like that. Nathan smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. Then we'll build the room just in case. The first day of school came on a bright April morning. Clara woke early, nerves jumping, and dressed in her best dress. The one she'd worn the day she arrived, now altered to fit better. The scars on her neck no longer something she tried to hide. By 8 o'clock, the children started arriving. 5 of them at first. Alice's daughter Mary, the Moss children, and 2 Carlson girls. They came shyly, uncertain, but their eyes lit up when they saw the books Clara had laid out. "Good morning," Clara said, voice steady despite her racing heart. "My name is Mrs. Hale, and this is our school. We're going to learn to read, write, and do arithmetic. We'll study history, geography, and science. But most importantly, we're going to learn how to think for ourselves and ask questions. Does that sound good?" The children nodded, wide-eyed. "Excellent. Let's begin." She'd forgotten how much she loved this. The curiosity on their faces, the careful way they formed letters, the sudden joy when a word clicked into place and meaning bloomed. Mary was quick, hungry for knowledge, racing through the primer faster than Clara expected. The Moss boy struggled but refused to give up, working the same problem 5 times until he got it right. The Carlson girls whispered and giggled but paid attention when it mattered. By noon, Clara's voice was hoarse and her back ached from bending over slates, but she felt more alive than she had in years. Nathan appeared at lunch with sandwiches and water. The children scattered outside to eat, and Clara collapsed into a chair. "How's it going?" he asked. "It's perfect. It's exhausting. It's exactly what I needed." "They seem to like you." "They're good children, smart. They just need someone to teach them." Nathan handed her a sandwich. "You're good at this. Really good." "I know," Clara said, not bragging, just stating fact. "This is what I was meant to do." Over the next weeks, more children came. Word spread. There was a teacher at the Hale homestead, a real one from Boston, and she didn't charge much, and she was patient and knew her subjects. By May, Clara had 12 students ranging from 6 to 14, and they met 4 days a week in the room that had once been storage. The parents paid what they could: eggs, milk, labor, sometimes cash. It wasn't much, but combined with what Nathan made from selling crops and hiring out for heavy work, they were surviving. More than surviving. They were building something. One afternoon, a woman Clara didn't recognize appeared at the door. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and a nervous expression. "Mrs. Hale?" "Yes?" "My name is Sarah Mitchell. My husband and I just claimed land about 10 miles south. I heard you're teaching children, and I wondered—" She hesitated. "I never learned to read. My family couldn't afford school. But I'd like to learn now, if you'd be willing to teach me." Clara's chest tightened. "Of course, come in." Sarah became her first adult student, coming twice a week in the evenings after the children had gone home. She was slow but determined, practicing letters until her fingers cramped, sounding out words with fierce concentration. Within a month, she could read simple sentences. Within 2, she was working through a borrowed novel, stumbling but persistent. "Why is this so important to you?" Clara asked one evening. Sarah looked up from the page. "Because I'm tired of being helpless. Tired of relying on my husband to read contracts, letters, everything. I want to know things for myself. I want to be able to teach my own children someday." Clara understood that. The need for independence, for competence, for control over your own life. "You're doing well," she said. "Better than most." "I have a good teacher." The compliment warmed Clara more than it should have. By summer, the homestead was thriving. Nathan's fields were green with wheat and corn. The garden produced more vegetables than they could eat, so Clara started preserving, lining the cellar with jars of beans, tomatoes, pickles. The chickens laid consistently. They'd acquired 2 cows and a pig, and Nathan was talking about buying more livestock in the fall. The school had grown to 15 students, with 3 more adults coming for evening lessons. Clara's days were full, teaching, cooking, cleaning, managing the endless work that came with running a household and a school. She was exhausted most of the time. She'd never been happier. One evening in July, after the students had left and supper was finished, Clara sat on the porch with Nathan, watching the sunset over the prairie. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, and the air smelled like grass and wildflowers. "Tom stopped by today," Nathan said. "Asked if I'd be willing to run for township trustee." Clara turned to him, surprised. "What did you say?" "That I'd think about it. I'm not much for politics. But you care about this community, about making things better. So do a lot of people. Why me?" "Because people trust you, because you're fair and you don't take sides, and you've proven you'll fight for what's right." Clara took his hand. "I think you should do it." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "If I do, It'll mean more time away from the homestead, meetings, decisions, dealing with everyone's problems. We'll manage. We always do. He looked at her, something like wonder in his eyes. When did you get so confident? When I stopped being afraid. Clara squeezed his hand. We've survived everything thrown at us. Fires, fraud, winter, starting over. A few township meetings won't break us. Nathan laughed. All right. I'll tell Tom yes. The summer rolled on. Nathan was elected trustee in August, and suddenly their home became a gathering place. Neighbors stopping by to discuss road repairs, water rights, boundary disputes. Clara made coffee and listened, occasionally offering suggestions that people started taking seriously. The school thrived. Clara added history and literature to the curriculum, borrowing books from anyone who had them, reading aloud in the evenings to students who stayed late. She started a small library in the corner of the schoolroom, and children came just to browse, to touch the spines, to imagine the worlds inside. In September, the harvest came. Nathan worked from dawn until dark, cutting wheat, threshing, hauling grain to market. Tom and his sons helped, and Nathan returned the favor, and by the time they were done, everyone was exhausted but satisfied. The yields were good, better than good. Nathan sold enough to pay back Tom's loan, cover winter supplies, and still have money left over. We should celebrate, Clara said, counting the money. How? A barn raising. We help others build theirs, they help us build ours. It's tradition, right? It is. Then let's do it. A new barn, bigger than the old one. And while everyone's here, we'll have a party. Food, music, dancing. The community deserves it. Nathan looked skeptical. I don't know how to throw a party. Good thing I do. They set the date for late September, after harvest, but before the weather turned. Clara sent word to every family within 20 miles, and to her surprise, nearly everyone said they'd come. The week before, they prepared. Nathan and Tom laid the foundation. Alice and Clara cooked, pies, bread, roasted chickens, enough to feed an army. Henry Moss brought his fiddle. The Carlsons brought cider. The day of the raising dawned clear and cool, perfect working weather. By mid-morning, wagons started arriving. Families with tools, lumber, children running everywhere, dogs barking. Clara watched from the porch as the community she'd become part of assembled in her yard. These people who'd been strangers 7 months ago were now neighbors, friends, something like family. Nathan appeared beside her. You ready for this? Are you? No, but let's do it anyway. They spent the day working, men raising walls, women organizing food, children playing in the fields. The barn went up piece by piece, the frame taking shape, the roof going on as the sun started to dip. By evening, it was done. A new barn, solid and strong, standing where the burned wreck had been. Tom raised a bottle. To the Hales, and to neighbors who know how to build something worth having, everyone cheered. The music started. Henry played his fiddle, someone else had a harmonica, and people began to dance in the yard. Clara watched, smiling, until Nathan grabbed her hand. I don't dance, she protested. Neither do I. We'll figure it out. He pulled her into the makeshift dance floor, and they stumbled through something that was more swaying than dancing, both of them laughing, surrounded by people who'd shown up when it mattered. As the stars came out and the music played on, Clara looked around at the barn, the house, the fields, the people, and realized something profound. She'd come here with nothing. No money, no prospects, no hope. She'd come as a bride who'd been abandoned, and she'd become someone entirely different. A wife, a teacher, a member of a community, a woman who'd fought for her place and won. The scars on her neck didn't matter anymore. No one looked at them with pity or disgust. They looked at Clara and saw someone who belonged. Nathan pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not running. For staying. For giving me a reason to stay, too. Nathan kissed the top of her head. Best decision I ever made. The party went late into the night. When the last family finally left, Clara and Nathan stood alone in the yard, the new barn dark against the stars, the house glowing with lamplight behind them. What do we do now? Clara asked. Nathan smiled. We keep building, keep growing, keep making this place home. Clara looked at the homestead, their homestead, and nodded. Sounds like a plan. They walked inside together, closing the door on the night, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future didn't feel uncertain. It felt possible. And that was enough. Winter came early that year, the first snow falling in mid-October while the leaves on the cottonwoods were still half green. Clara woke to find the world transformed, white and silent. The homestead buried under 6 inches of powder that sparkled in the dawn light. Nathan was already up, stoking the fire, his breath misting in the cold kitchen. He glanced over when she appeared, wrapped in the quilt from their bed. "Gonna be a hard one," he said. Old-timers in town said they could feel it coming. Early snow means a long freeze. Clara moved to the window, watching snow drift against the new barn. "Are we ready?" "As ready as we can." "B. Barn's stocked. We've got enough firewood to last until March if we're careful. Food stores are good." He poured coffee, handing her a cup. "But it's going to be a test. Last winter nearly broke us, and we were just trying to survive. This year, we've got students, responsibilities, people counting on us." "Then we'll manage," Clara said, sipping the hot coffee. "We always do." But managing turned out to be harder than either of them expected. The snow didn't stop. It fell for 3 days straight, piling up until the drifts reached the windowsills. The wind came next, howling across the prairie, driving the temperature so low that water froze solid in the buckets overnight. School had to be canceled. No one could travel in weather like this. Clara spent her days keeping the fire going, cooking, mending clothes by lamplight, while the world outside raged white and furious. Nathan ventured out twice a day to check the animals, coming back each time half frozen, ice crusted in his beard, his hands so cold Clara had to rub them back to feeling. "Lost a chicken," he said one evening, shaking snow from his coat. "Froze overnight despite the coop." Clara felt the loss keenly. Every animal mattered, every egg, every pound of meat. Winter wasn't forgiving of waste. "The cows?" she asked. "They're holding up. But if this keeps going, we'll have to bring them closer to the house. The barn's not insulated enough." By the end of November, they'd lost 2 more chickens, and one of the pigs had sickened. Nathan slaughtered it before it died, and they preserved what meat they could, but it felt like defeat. The isolation wore on them. Days passed without seeing another soul. The snow was too deep for visitors, the roads impassable. Clara missed her students, missed the sound of voices that weren't just hers and Nathan's. One night, after a dinner eaten mostly in silence, she set down her fork and said, "Tell me something I don't know about you." Nathan looked up, surprised. "What?" "We've been married almost a year, and I feel like I only know the surface. Tell me something real, something you've never told anyone." He was quiet for a long moment, firelight playing across his face. Then he said, "I killed a man once, during the war, not in battle. After." Clara's breath caught, but she didn't look away. "What happened?" "We'd just taken a town in Virginia. My unit was camped outside, waiting for orders. There was a farm nearby, family still living there, old man, his daughter, maybe 16. One of our officers went there, said he was requisitioning supplies." Nathan's jaw tightened. He came back with more than supplies. The girl's dress was torn. She was crying. The old man was dead. Clara's stomach turned. "I confronted him," Nathan continued, voice flat. "He laughed, said it was war and the girl was a traitor's daughter. And what did it matter? I shot him. Right there. In front of witnesses." "What did they do?" "Covered it up. Said he'd been killed by a sniper. They knew what he'd done, knew he deserved it, but officially it never happened." Nathan met her eyes. "I don't regret it. But I think about it sometimes. About how easy it was. How little I felt." Clara reached across the table, taking his hand. "You felt enough to pull the trigger. That's not nothing. Isn't it? Sometimes I wonder if the war broke something in me. Made me too comfortable with violence. You're not violent. I've seen you with the animals, with the neighbors' children, with me. You're careful. Controlled. Because I have to be. Because I know what I'm capable of." Clara squeezed his hand. "We're all capable of terrible things under the right circumstances. The measure of a person isn't what they could do. It's what they choose to do. And you chose to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. That's not broken. That's human." Nathan exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Your turn. Tell me something I don't know." Clara thought about it. There were so many things she'd never said, so many fears and doubts she'd kept locked away. "I'm terrified I'll lose this," she said finally. "The homestead, the school, you, that I'll wake up one day and it'll all be gone, and I'll be back where I started, alone and scarred and unwanted. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. People leave. Things fall apart. I learned that when my parents died, when my brother turned me away, when Samuel disappeared. She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. I spent my whole life believing I wasn't worth staying for. And now I have this life that feels too good to be real, and I keep waiting for it to break. Nathan stood, coming around the table. He knelt beside her chair, taking her face in his hands. Listen to me, he said, voice fierce. I'm not leaving, not ever. You want to know why? Because you're the first person who ever made me want to stay. Who made me believe I could build something instead of just running from it. You saved me, Clara, as much as I saved you. Maybe more. Tears burned in her eyes. Nathan, I mean it. You're stuck with me. For better or worse. And I know it's going to be worse sometimes. We're going to fight and struggle and probably drive each other half crazy. But I'm not going anywhere, you understand? Clara nodded, unable to speak. He kissed her, soft and sure, and she kissed him back, pouring every fear and hope and desperate love into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. We're going to be okay, he said, and for the first time, Clara believed him completely. The storm broke 2 days later. The snow stopped, the wind died, and the sun came out, bright and blinding against the white landscape. The cold remained, brutal and sharp, but at least they could see beyond their own walls again. Tom Brennan showed up on the third day, riding a horse through snow that came up to its chest. He looked half frozen, his face red and chapped. Just checking on you two, he said, accepting the coffee Clara pressed into his hands. Lost anyone? A few chickens, 1 pig, Nathan said. You? 2 calves, and our roof's leaking. Can't fix it until the ice melts. Tom drank the coffee in long gulps. Henry Moss lost his whole chicken flock. Coop collapsed under the snow weight. And the Mitchells, Sarah and her husband, they're in bad shape. Their dugout flooded when the creek overflowed. They're staying with the Carlsons, but it's tight quarters. Claire's chest tightened. Sarah, her student, the woman who'd been so determined to learn to read. Can we help? She asked. Tom shrugged. Don't know what anyone can do until spring, but I figured you'd want to know. After Tom left, Clara turned to Nathan. We have to do something. Like what? We can barely take care of ourselves. We have space, the second bedroom. It's just sitting empty. Nathan frowned. You want to take them in? Why not? They need a place to stay and we have room. It's what neighbors do. Clara, that's 2 more mouths to feed, 2 more people to house and care for. We don't have the resources for that. Then we'll find them. We'll make do. We can't just leave them to freeze or starve. Nathan rubbed his face, exhausted. You're not going to let this go, are you? No, he sighed. All right, we'll talk to them. See if they want to come. They rode to the Carlsons' farm the next day, the horses struggling through drifts that made the journey twice as long as it should have been. The Carlson house was packed, 2 families crammed into a space meant for 1, children sleeping on the floor, tension thick in the air. Sarah looked thin and tired, her hands red and raw from work. When Clara explained their offer, her eyes filled with tears. We can't impose like that, she said. You're not imposing. We're offering. Clara took her hands. Please, let us help. Sarah glanced at her husband, a quiet man named David who looked like he hadn't slept in days. He nodded slowly. If you're sure, Sarah said, we'll work. Earn our keep. We won't be a burden. I know you won't, Clara said. They moved in 2 days later, bringing what little they'd salvaged from the flooded dugout. Nathan and David cleared snow, repaired fences, and worked on plans to rebuild the Mitchells' home in the spring. Sarah helped Clara with cooking, cleaning, and preparing lessons for when school could resume. It was crowded. The house that had felt spacious now felt small, every room occupied, privacy a distant memory. But it worked. They fell into a routine, Nathan and David handling the heavy outdoor work, Clara and Sarah managing the house and planning the school. At night, they sat around the fire, talking. David told stories about growing up in Pennsylvania. Sarah practiced her reading aloud, stumbling over words but improving. Nathan carved small figures from scraps of wood, and Clara mended clothes, and for a while the isolation of winter felt less oppressive. One evening, Sarah set down the book she'd been reading and looked at Clara. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you do it? Come here with nothing and build all this?" Clara thought about the question. The real answer was complicated. Luck, desperation, stubbornness, Nathan. "I didn't have a choice," she said finally. "When I got off that train and Samuel was gone, I had 43 cents and nowhere to go. I could have given up, but giving up meant dying, so I didn't. I found Nathan and we made a deal and we worked. Every day we worked. Some days were harder than others. Some days I wanted to quit. But we kept going because the alternative was worse." Sarah nodded slowly. "David and we came out here thinking it'd be easy. Claim land, build a house, farm. We didn't realize how hard it would be, how lonely, how much we didn't know." "No one realizes it until they're living it," Clara said. "But you're tougher than you think. You survived the flood. You're learning to read. You're still here, still trying. That counts for something." "Does it get easier?" Clara smiled. "No, but you get stronger." By January, the worst of the winter had passed. The snow remained, but the storms lessened. The days grew longer, incrementally, and the cold, while still brutal, felt less like a weapon and more like an obstacle to be endured. School resumed in February, children arriving on sleds or walking through snow that still came up to their knees. Clara taught with a fervor born of months without it, and the students responded, hungry for knowledge, for distraction, for connection. Sarah joined the classes, sitting in the back, practicing alongside the children. No one thought it strange. Out here, learning had no age limit. One afternoon, a stranger appeared at the door. He was older, maybe 60, with a weathered face and a carpet bag slung over his shoulder. "Mrs. Hale?" "Yes, my name is Reverend Thomas Cook. I'm traveling through the territory, holding services, marrying folks, baptizing children. I heard you've got a community gathering here. Thought I'd offer my services." Clara hesitated. She and Nathan hadn't been to church since the wedding. Religion felt complicated, a comfort to some, a weapon to others. But the community might want it. "Let me talk to my husband," she said. Nathan was less enthusiastic. "We don't need some preacher telling us how to live. It's not about us. It's about the neighbors. Some of them want services, baptisms. Let him hold a meeting, and people can decide for themselves." Nathan sighed. "Fine, but he's not staying here. He can use the church building in town." The Reverend held a service the following Sunday. Half the community came, families grateful for the ritual, the structure, the sense of something bigger than survival. Clara went, more out of curiosity than faith, and sat in the back while Reverend Cook spoke about perseverance and community and building something worth having. It was fine, harmless, the kind of thing people needed to feel connected. Afterward, Alice Brennan approached Clara. "Thank you for arranging this. It's been too long since we had proper services." "It was the Reverend's idea, not mine." "Still, you made it happen. You're good at that. Making things happen." Clara didn't know how to respond, so she just smiled. March brought the first real thaw. The snow began to melt, revealing brown grass and muddy earth. The creek swelled with runoff, and the air smelled like wet dirt and growing things. Nathan and David started work on the Mitchells' new home. Not a dugout this time, but a proper cabin on higher ground. The community helped, materials donated or traded, labor given freely. Clara watched the structure go up, piece by piece, and felt a surge of pride. This was what they'd built. Not just a homestead, but a community. People who helped each other survive. By April, the cabin was finished. Sarah and David moved in, tearful and grateful, promising to repay the kindness someday. "You already have," Clara said. "Just keep going, keep building. That's payment enough." The spring planting began. Nathan worked the fields with a determination bordering on obsession, driven by the knowledge that last year's harvest had been good, but not guaranteed to repeat. Clara helped when she could, but the school demanded most of her time. She had 18 students now, ranging from 6 to 40. The adults came in the evenings, practicing letters by lamplight, and Clara felt a fierce satisfaction watching them progress. One night, Sarah read an entire chapter of a novel without stumbling once. When she finished, she looked up, eyes shining. "I did it." "You did," Clara said, smiling. "I can read. I can actually read." Sarah laughed, the sound bright and disbelieving. "I never thought I'd be able to say that. You worked for it. You earned it. Sarah hugged her, sudden and tight. Thank you. For everything. For teaching me, for taking us in, for making me believe I could do this. Clara hugged her back, throat tight. You did it yourself. I just showed you how. In May, a letter arrived from Boston. Clara didn't recognize the handwriting, but her stomach dropped when she saw the return address, her brother's house. She opened it with shaking hands. The letter was short, formal, cold. Clara, I recently learned of your marriage and your new circumstances in Nebraska Territory. I hope this letter finds you well. Our family attorney informs me that Mother's estate has been settled, and there is a small inheritance due to you, $200. I am forwarding the funds via bank draft. I trust you will use them wisely. Your brother, Jonathan. Clara stared at the letter, then at the bank draft tucked inside. $200. A fortune. Enough to expand the school, buy livestock, build the extra rooms Nathan had talked about. Enough to secure their future in ways they hadn't dared imagine. She showed Nathan that evening. He read the letter twice, then set it down carefully. That's a lot of money. It is. What do you want to do with it? Clara thought about it. The practical part of her brain listed needs, tools, seeds, lumber. But another part, the part that had been scarred and rejected and told she wasn't worth keeping, wanted something else. I want to go back, she said, to Boston, just for a visit, to see my brother, to show him I didn't just survive, I thrived, and then I want to come home and use the money to build something permanent, a real school building maybe, something that'll last. Nathan studied her face. You sure you want to see him? After everything? No, but I think I need to close that door properly. Then we'll go, together. They left in June after the planting was done and the school was on summer break. The train east felt familiar now, the journey less daunting. Clara watched the landscape change, prairie to farmland to city, and felt the difference in herself. She wasn't running this time. She was visiting, a tourist in the place that used to be home. Boston felt smaller than she remembered, louder, dirtier, more cramped. The streets that had once felt cosmopolitan now felt suffocating. Her brother's house was in a respectable neighborhood, a narrow brick building with shuttered windows. Clara stood on the steps, Nathan beside her, and knocked. A servant answered, eyeing them with thinly veiled disdain. These rough-dressed Westerners at a gentleman's door. We're here to see Jonathan Whitmore, Clara said, voice steady. I'm his sister. The servant's eyebrows rose, but she let them in. Jonathan appeared a few minutes later, older than Clara remembered, his hair thinning, his face lined with the kind of stress that came from trying to maintain appearances on a declining income. He looked at Clara, and she saw the moment he registered the scars on her neck, the calloused hands, the plain dress. Clara, he said, voice flat. You came. I did, to thank you for the inheritance and to introduce you to my husband, Nathan Hale. Jonathan's eyes flicked to Nathan, assessing and dismissing in the same glance. A pleasure. They sat in the parlor, stiff and formal, and Clara realized she had nothing to say to this man. He was her brother by blood, but they were strangers. They'd always been strangers. I hear you're teaching out west, Jonathan said. I am. A school on our homestead. 18 students so far. How rustic. Nathan's hand found hers, a silent reminder. She wasn't alone. She didn't need this man's approval. It's a good life, Clara said. Hard, but good. We own our land. We're building something that matters. I'm happy. Jonathan looked skeptical. Are you? Living in the middle of nowhere, teaching farmers' children? Yes, Clara said simply. Happier than I ever was here. Something flickered in Jonathan's expression. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment. He'd expected her to fail, to come back broken, begging for help. Instead, she'd come back whole. Well, he said, I'm glad Mother's money will be put to use. They left after 20 minutes, the visit perfunctory and hollow. On the street, Clara exhaled hard. That was a mistake. Was it? Nathan asked. I thought I needed closure, but there's nothing to close. He's not my family. Not really. You are. The homestead is. The community is. Nathan pulled her close right there on the Boston street. Then let's go home. They caught the westbound train that evening. and with every mile, Clara felt lighter. The city fell away, replaced by open space, and by the time they reached Nebraska territory, she was ready. Ready to use the inheritance to build a real school. Ready to expand the homestead. Ready to live the life they'd fought so hard to create. The school building went up in August. A single-room structure with windows on both sides, a wood stove, and enough space for 25 students. The community helped build it, donating materials and labor. And when it was finished, Clara stood inside and cried. She had a school, a real one, the kind she'd dreamed of in Boston but never thought she'd have. The fall term started in September with 22 students. Clara hired Sarah as her assistant, and together they taught reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science. The children thrived. The adults kept coming for evening lessons, and Clara, standing at the front of the room, watching students bent over their work, felt a satisfaction so deep it bordered on joy. This was what she was meant to do. This was home. One October evening, a year and a half after Clara had first stepped off the train, she and Nathan sat on the porch of the homestead watching the sun set over fields they'd planted and harvested together. "Do you ever think about Samuel?" Clara asked. "Sometimes. I wonder where he is, if he's still running." "Do you think he regrets it? Leaving?" Nathan considered. "Maybe. Or maybe he's exactly where he wants to be. Some people aren't built for staying." "But you are." "I am now." He looked at her. "Because of you." Clara leaned into him, his arm coming around her shoulders. "We built something good here." "We did." "Think it'll last?" "As long as we keep choosing it, every day. That's the thing about building a life. It's not one decision, it's 1,000 small ones. And as long as we keep choosing each other, keep choosing this, it'll last." Clara thought about that, about the 1,000 small choices that had brought them here. Her choice to step off the train instead of buying a ticket back east. Nathan's choice to offer her shelter. Their choice to fight for the land, to marry for real, to open their home to others. Every choice building on the last, creating something solid. "I choose this," she said. "I choose you, every day." "Good," Nathan said, "because you're stuck with me." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, the prairie settling into darkness around them. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, and another answered. The land stretched out in all directions, wild, difficult, beautiful. A place that demanded everything and gave back just enough to keep you going. Clara had come here broken, expecting nothing, and had found everything. A home. A purpose. A man who saw her scars and loved her anyway. A community that valued her for what she could do, not what she looked like. She'd arrived as Clara Whitmore, abandoned bride, marked by fire and failure. She'd become Clara Hale, teacher, wife, builder of something that would outlast them both. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Nathan stirred beside her. "You getting cold?" "A little." "Come on, let's go inside." They stood, and Clara took one last look at the homestead, the house they'd rebuilt, the barn they'd raised, the school that stood proud against the darkening sky. This was theirs, not because it had been promised to them, but because they'd claimed it, fought for it, earned it with sweat and stubbornness and love that had grown from practicality into something real. Nathan held out his hand, Clara took it, and together they walked into the warmth of the home they'd built, ready for whatever came next. Because they'd learned the most important lesson the prairie had to teach. You don't survive out here by being perfect. You survive by being resilient. By showing up every day, even when it's hard. By choosing to stay when running would be easier. By building something worth fighting for. And then fighting like hell to keep it.